All set. All right. Good evening. I'll call to order this meeting of the Cotati City Council and the successor agency to the former Cotati Community Redevelopment Agency. Can we start with a roll call, please?
Councilmember Savage.
Here.
Councilmember Sparks.
Here.
Councilmember Harvey.
Here.
Vice Mayor Lemus.
Here.
Mayor Ford.
Here. And in our new order of business, our first item is public comment on non-action agenda items. So these are items that the council is not going to consider tonight, but are still on our agenda. So those include announcements, proclamations, presentations, direction on future agenda items, and 2 report items at the end of the agenda. So if you wish to comment on any of those, you're welcome to do so at this time. We'll start in the chambers. Let's start over here, Mr. Barrich.
Good evening, Council. For the 422nd time, I am former Cotati City Councilman George Barrich. Mr. Mayor, and according to proper etiquette, I would like you to at least acknowledge me as former City Councilman Barrich or Councilman Barrich. But evidently your ego's not going to let you do that, sir. And it's a sad testament of where this town has become under your failed leadership. This whole idea of public comment on non-action items is really perverse. The government code does not make any distinction between action items and non-action items. So I don't know what kind of lunacy that you continue to want to engage in putting this item 2 up here when it makes no sense. Whenever you have an agenda item and you utter a word about that item, it becomes a matter which triggers the government code to allow the public to speak if they wish to speak. You're playing games with the government code. You're walking a fine line with the California Brown Act, and it needs to stop. You've been warned numerous times about this, and it needs to stop. Also, regarding announcements, I will speak on announcements here, since you say that's not an action item, yet you go into this diatribe of a prepared speech for years on end on announcements. It says here on item E that, quote, like always, we love to hear from you. So please feel free to contact us, blah, 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 blah. Okay? That's not the problem. Not only have I schooled you that you don't love to hear from us, after me sending emails to the city council members for 25 years and not getting many, if any, responses back, but you don't take any action. You don't love to do anything that we taxpayers ask you to do, unless it falls into your socialist agenda, your feel-good, gender-neutral agenda, white guilt agenda, your propaganda. You know, that's when maybe you'll contact us. But if we stand up to it at all, you don't want to do anything about it. This is just perverse. It's an abomination. You need to clean this up and stop looking like horses' asses by saying that you love to hear from people when you don't. You simply don't. You have your agenda, you will censor, you will silence, you will retaliate against good citizens in town. They don't fall into line with your communist manifesto, and it needs to stop. It's going to get worse, and it's not going to go away. Clean up these announcements so that they speak some truth. You do not love to hear from people that you disagree with. It's un-American. It's not what Cotati was all about. It's not for what our founding fathers and mothers carved out this town to mean. You guys have just perverted it, and I'm tired of it.
Thank you. Mr. Chermello.
Okay, first off, number 2, I believe you need to have somebody correct the spelling on agenda. I don't know what an agenda is. That being said, you did roll call. Roll call used to be on your agenda. That was an agenda item. It's no longer on there. I'm going to read you the code again, 954.2A3. No action or discussion shall be undertaken on any item not appearing on the posted agenda. So please don't do the Pledge of Allegiance. It's not on the agenda anymore. You took it off. This council voted to take it off. The same with the land acknowledgement. You took it off. I didn't tell you to take it off. Mr. Barrett didn't tell you to take it off. Don't do it again. You're violating the law by doing this. And I've told you, you get one more shot after this meeting here. If you do it again, 2 more meetings, you'll have a lawsuit on your desk. I'm not playing with this stuff. There's a real reason why you don't have land acknowledgement on there. And we all know what it is. You don't want Mr. Barrett speaking to it. You made it quite clear. You're taking away this man's right to speak to an item of interest to him, whether it's the Pledge of Allegiance, whether it's land acknowledgement, or whether it's your comments at the end of a meeting. That if it's listed on the agenda, he has a right to speak to it. I have a right to speak to it. Anybody out here in this audience has a right to speak to any item of public interest. But if it's not on your agenda, you don't get to bring it up. You can't take action on my public comment on things. And as Mr. Barrett says, which was a good point, there is no distinction in the Brown Act that says you can consider action items and non-action items separately. Any item, including consent calendar items, every single one of those should be able to be addressed by a member of the public if it's of interest to them. You're going to give us 3 minutes to speak to public comment and all the rest of it? It's just not right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Anybody else in the chambers? Yes.
Good evening. I'm Jackie DeLasso, and I just wanted to express my concern for the trees that are in Putnam Park with the current renovation that's going on. The redwood tree roots have been severely disrupted. I'm concerned about the viability of the trees in the long run. And up near the parking lot, there's a row of oak trees.
Jackie,
and
I hate to interrupt. So this is specifically about non-action agenda items. There's soon coming up a citizens' business time, and this sounds more like a citizens' business comment. I just want to make sure this is not specifically about our proclamations or reports or.
Okay, I'm confused. I just wanted to express concern for the trees. That's
I'm
all.
sorry. Yeah, I know. I'm just trying to hold to this specific. So it'll be in about, well, depending on how long it takes us to get through the proclamations and the presentation. Sorry.
That's okay.
Okay, thanks. Anybody else in the chambers? Okay, let's check with our Zoom attendees.
Thank you, Mayor Ford. Speaking to our Zoom attendees, please use the raise hand icon to make a public comment. The first hand is from Lori Alderman. Lori, you have the floor.
Hi. I'd like to agree with the previous speakers that you're limiting public comment by putting this non-agenda items. The city of Rohnert Park, just an hour ago, the city attorney overruled the mayor on this agenda, that every item is allowed on the agenda to be spoke on by, and this is enough. You guys you've had civil rights after civil rights suit. Why are you even doing this? It's ridiculous. You don't want to hear from us. George is right. You don't want to hear anybody that doesn't sing in harmony with you. It's just, and then you take out on everybody else. All we want is the truth to be said here. And you can't have that if you have one way on these consent items, these non-action items. And we can't comment on the city council reports. We can't count city on the city managers anymore because you put it up in front where we don't need it. You need to listen to us, and all of this is gonna be in the way you're going legally. You're losing it, and you're gonna be in front of a federal judge. It's gonna be looking at all these tapes and wondering what the hell you were all thinking, and you're making yourself all personally liable by unanimously approving of what is happening. That's it.
Thank you.
Seeing no further hands, Mayor Ford, that will end public comment.
Okay, thank you. City Attorney Bacher, I'm wondering if you could clarify a little bit, just now that you've had plenty of chances to look into this, the ways in which our current opportunities for public comment do afford appropriate opportunity to address issues that council will consider.
Well, Mr. Mayor, as you indicated, the public has an opportunity to speak on all of the items, non-action items that are on the agenda. Mr. Berich had an opportunity right here to speak to the land acknowledgement. He could speak to it during public comment. Those are not items under the Brown Act. They are simply statements that the council makes during its meeting as part of its process and policies. Is that responsive to your question? Or are you?
Yeah, I just want to make sure that, so according to your reading, reciting a pledge or a land acknowledgement does not constitute taking action.
It does not. It's not an item under the Brown Act.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you for the public comment. We will move on now to item 3, approval of the minutes and notice of waiving of reading of all resolutions and ordinances introduced and/or adopted under this agenda. We have one set of minutes, which is May 13th, 2025. We have a brief staff recommendation on this item.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I'd recommend that we just move this item to the next agenda, postpone taking action on the minutes tonight, and then also the policy actions that we talked about earlier. Doing those.
I didn't understand the last.
Oh, yeah, that. I'm just recommending moving this item to the next agenda.
Okay, so is that technically a continuance? I don't know what the
Continuing,
right word.
yeah, to the
Okay.
26th. Yeah.
And I'm going to go ahead and open up these minutes for public comment in case anybody wishes to comment on the draft that's in the packet, but we won't be taking action until next meeting. Let's start with Zoom. Anybody wishing to comment on the minutes of May 13th?
Thank you, Mayor Ford. Once again, Zoom attendees, please use the raise hand icon to make a public comment. The first hand is from Lori Alderman. You have the floor.
Hi. I wanted to comment that the minutes need correcting because once again, they're not showing any opposition, any people doing the protests and all that. And also, Mayor Ford, he called the recess before you say there was a disruption in the land acknowledgement. So you need to correct those. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else on the minutes? Nobody else on Zoom?
No further hands on Zoom, Mayor Ford.
Okay. In the room, minutes of May 13th. Go ahead, Mr. Parrish.
It's former Councilman Berich, Mayor. Regarding the minutes, I don't hear a valid reason that we're rescheduling this item for a future city council meeting. Is there a valid reason? We all know that the minutes do not reflect what happens at these meetings. Ms. Alderman is absolutely correct. Any objections from the public as to the mayor hell-bent on disrupting the meetings is not reflected in the minutes, which should be. Everybody who comments on each item should be in the minutes as someone who at least commented, agreed, took opposition. That's the very least you could do, considering what we're paying city staff to do. It's ludicrous. You guys can't even vote on the minutes of the last meeting? How many weeks do you need to take to review the videotape, to see what's on there? Although Mr. Savage is correct saying that we all have a good record of the meetings on tape. However, they're not official. They're not added as official to the minutes, which they should be. Something you guys should really consider. That might be something to put a feather in your cap about, because the minutes, the videos are very telling, the audio and video. But it is the citizens who are ignored in the minutes, and they're not accurate. So why delay the minutes is just absurd. And there's no reason to have asked Mrs. Deloso to come back. That was just silly.
Anybody else on the minutes? Okay, we'll close public comment. Do you have a brief explanation for the council as well, why we're continuing?
We had to make some amendments to the Redwood Row minutes.
Okay, thanks. So any objection to continuing that to the next agenda? All right. Now, because of our new order, I messed up the order here. I was supposed to do our housekeeping items before the minutes. So unless there's objection from the council, I will continue with our land acknowledgement and Pledge of Allegiance. We like to stand to do these at the beginning of the meeting, and I invite you to stand with us if you wish. The City of Cotati recognizes that we're on the ancestral lands of the Coast Miwok, who are the original caretakers of this area. We respectfully acknowledge the indigenous peoples who have been stewarding and maintaining a relationship on this land as knowledge keepers for millennia. This acknowledgement does not take the place of authentic relationships with indigenous communities, but serves as a gesture of respect to the land we are on. And now the pledge. Thank you. Okay, now I have some announcements, which, as has been pointed out, if you've been here before, you know. But for new attendees, in conformance with the Brown Act and the adopted City Council rules, the meeting agenda includes items labeled as action items, where the City Council may consider the item, if the City Council considers the item being discussed. The meeting agenda also includes a citizens' business item, which is the designated place on the agenda where citizens have the right to say whatever they wish. However, the Brown Act prohibits the City Council from taking action or considering any item that is not on this agenda to ensure that other members of the community who wish to provide comment are notified in advance through a properly noticed meeting agenda. Next, Measure S supports police services, a variety of recreation programs for all ages, and the maintenance of our streets, parks, and public buildings. See details on the web at cotadicity.gov. Next, citizens interested in receiving City of Cotati community alerts via text or email are encouraged to enroll with Civic Ready by signing up on the city's website, cotadicity.gov, under the How Do I link at the top of the homepage. And next, have you noticed a streetlight out, pothole, or issues in a city park? We want to keep Cotati beautiful and running smoothly, so please let us know what needs to be fixed by following one of the QR codes posted around the city or just going to the city website under How Do I and Report a Service Request. And finally, like always, we love to hear from you, so please feel free to contact the city at 707-792-4600 or info@cotadicity.gov. If you have a non-emergency issue after normal business hours, please contact 911. Continue to look for updates on the city's website and social media channels available on Facebook, Instagram, and Civic Ready. And with that, we're on to item 5, which is proclamations. We have one proclamation today, and because we learned last meeting that proclamations should be classified as an action item, we'll be fixing that in the council rules soon, but for now we're taking public comment on the proclamation. So there's one proclamation proclaiming the month of June 2025 as Pride Month, and I'll open that up for public comment now. I'm not seeing any hands in the chambers. Let's check with Zoom.
Thank you, Mayor Ford. Zoom attendees, if you'd like to make a public comment on this item, please use the raise hand icon. Seeing no hands, Mayor Ford, that will end public comment.
Okay, thanks. So Councilmember Savage is going to read this one, and I think we have, sorry, we do have somebody wishing to speak?
No, this is my first time that I'm coming to these meetings.
Okay.
So I just want to know what happened to that hotel that was built in that corner over there.
Okay, so
I don't know if that changed to this meeting or is it a different one?
no, so the time to ask and make the comment is agenda item 8. It's a couple items still coming. So we'll be sure to call you up at agenda item 8, okay? And then we'll ask staff to respond to your questions. Okay, thanks. So Item 5A, proclaiming the month of June 2025 as Pride Month. Councilmember Savage will read it. I think we don't have anybody here to receive it tonight, right? And he'll
Correct.
explain why.
All right, thank you, Mayor. The proclamation reads, whereas Cotati's LGBTQ+ community is comprised of individuals, families, and allies who are an integral part of the fabric of our city and who demonstrate pride in and commitment to our city throughout the year by virtue of their contributions to its economy, culture, and quality of life. And whereas the LGBTQ+ community has much to celebrate in terms of business and professional achievements, artistic expression, political involvement, community activities, and life-affirming family relationships, and are a vital part of Sonoma County culture. And whereas the City of Cotati and the LGBTQ+ community of Sonoma County continue to support and encourage diversity in the workplace and throughout the community. And whereas the city is proud of its skilled, talented, and dedicated employees, including the LGBTQ+ community, who work tirelessly to provide services to the people of Cotati. Now, therefore, let it be proclaimed on this day, May 27th, 2025, by the City Council of the City of Cotati, hereby celebrates the month of June 2025 as Pride Month. Signed, Mayor Ben Ford. And we have a Pride flag raising ceremony a week from Thursday on June 5th at 11 o'clock here in front of City Hall. And we have two organizations we'll be acknowledging with the proclamation. The first one is Amor Para Todos, also known as APT, that works with our community and our schools in providing resources to the LGBTQ+ community. And then we have a second organization, and Laura will tell us about that.
The second organization coming to the flag raising is the SRJC Queer Student Union. They'll be joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you both, and thank you for handing the copies of the proclamation to the receiving organizations at the flag raising. All right, we're on to approval of the final agenda. Are there any changes proposed? Oops, sorry, wait, I'm forgetting something. Oh, I'm sorry. I skipped right over item 6. So thank you for stopping me. Item 6 is a presentation from Supervisor David Rabbit, whom I've been seeing back there, and I'm sure he didn't want me to skip him. So please come on up.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. I appreciate being here. Thank you very much. Mr. Savage, Councilmember Savage, welcome. Look forward to getting together in person as well, but I do like to come through every now and again and give a little presentation and have a conversation regarding some of the things of mutual interest that are happening at the county. And I do have a slide. It's a little out of date only because we're in budget season. And when you're in budget season, budget is the thing that we typically concentrate on. So with that, I'm going to kind of skip a little bit around and just talk real briefly about the situation for the budget at the county. I think every year, obviously, budgets always have their own set of challenges. That goes without comment. This year, though, it's an exponential increase in those challenges as we try to pass a balanced budget on projections and circumstances that, quite frankly, may change rather quickly. These challenges are different from the recessionary times. I hate to say it, having gone through 2008. While painful, recessions are pretty straightforward in budgeting. The revenues decline, the expenditures must decrease as well. California's economy has just been touted as the fourth largest in the world, and there's relatively low employment, strong job market, good growth, a wide array of business sectors, but it's not without its challenges as well, as we all know. High cost of living, homelessness, business out-migration, high taxes, etc. The combination of the good and the bad leads to what I always like this phrase from the economist Chris Thornburg. He refers to it as miserablism, really, where it's just all the numbers look good. The economy is going along relatively smoothly, but people are not feeling very confident, waiting for the next shoe to drop going forward. So consumer confidence is low, and therefore sales tax revenues are low. People are holding on to their cash just in case of things that are on the horizon. You throw in the new federal policies, tariffs, tax changes, and the ramifications therein, and it makes pretty much a most difficult budget cycle for 25-26. For the county, 38% of the county's $2.6 billion budget are federal and state funds, $319 million from the federal government, or about 14% of the total revenues. The feds have already clawed back some millions, already canceled a few previously appropriated awards, including $38 million in a FEMA BRIC grant. That BRIC stands for Building Resilient Infrastructure in Communities. That was given to us after the series of wildfires. Think vegetation management and home hardening to defend against those wildfires. The latest concern is language in grant acceptance agreements. Basically, it comes down to sign it and you break state law, don't sign it, and the county receives no funds. It's between a rock and a hard place. Over this past weekend, the County of Sonoma did join the King County, Washington-led lawsuit challenging grant acceptance language not included in the original legislation passed by Congress. We've also joined another lawsuit brought by San Francisco and Santa Clara counties arguing similar but slightly different terms. I'm sure the city attorney would really appreciate that. We should hear this week on whether the judge in the King County case will issue a temporary injunction. We hope so, because we have about a $5.4 million FAA grant that is kind of dependent on this moving forward, and unfortunately, it's phase one of a two-phase project that we'll all have to stop if we aren't able to move forward. So with all that said, it could be months before these things get straightened out, and undoubtedly, looks like the county will not receive funds for a variety of programs and projects going forward. And because because counties operate as an arm of the state, we currently have a no backfill policy, which I think undoubtedly this year is going to be tested. The county budget includes $557 million in state funding, or about 24% of the total revenues. And as you know, despite being the fourth largest economy in the state, we continue to struggle financially. The impacts for the Los Angeles wildfires have not yet played out, nor has the federal changes that will impact the state resources. So we will pass a balanced budget next month on time in advance of the fiscal year, and I suspect that we'll revisit that budget more often and more deeply than the quarterly adjustments that we have in the past. Our own departments have requested over $27 million in program change requests, or what we call add-backs, and the Board of Supervisors have requested over $8 million for assorted projects and programs. Interesting, in today's paper, they had a list of all the different numbers. Just so you know, my request was the same request I had last year, and it's more so for a policy direction that the county establish a catastrophic road fund. Our county has 1,368 miles of roads. We have incredible rainstorms, flood events, you name it. And each and every year we have a catastrophic road failure that exceeds the limited cash on hand that you could use for those types of things. And we need to kind of squirrel away some money into a fund where we can go ahead and take care of those things. Right now in our district, down Lakeville, if you drive from Highway 37, you'll notice a lot of cracking, sinking, and that's about a $10 million fix. It's just a lot of cash to come up with all at once, and that's only one of, I think, 4. Some of the other ones, as I'm sure the city manager would appreciate, are and will be reimbursed by FEMA. But when the road fails and you have to wait 10 years to get reimbursed, you have to take care of the road at some point, especially if it's a evacuation route or the only way in and out, so on and so forth. So we do need to kind of establish a plan of attack there. So I just wanted to let you know that's what my ask this year was, because I don't think any of those asks are going to be moved forward. Besides the state and federal policies and budgets that will impact the county, 2 factors this year, and I'm not sure if it's the same thing. I would imagine it would be here in Cotati. The first, for us at least, is information services. This new way of doing business, where it's called software as service, has become the norm, and the shift in cost has occurred because of it. Unlike buying a software and just doing the licenses, this is probably why they invented the cloud. Now they just bill you monthly, and all those things add up. And for us, it's 22% higher per department. And truth is that we held that back for a while, but we can't hold it back that much longer, especially given the budget, and we have to put that out. It'll normalize over the course of time. The other thing that in the information services side of things is cybersecurity, which obviously needs attention and investment as well. So the other thing for us is insurance. And again, I would imagine the same thing here. The county's general liability has increased dramatically. Tight market conditions, especially in California, one of the states where there is no cap on liability settlements. As a result, the county will increase its self-assured retention from $1 million to $2 million this year per occurrence. If you followed the news a few months back, Los Angeles County settled a class action lawsuit for $4 billion, and they're self-insured, but $4 billion, and that got everyone's attention. And that's from sexual assault cases over a long period of time. Obviously, tragic events. Counties, obviously, through whether it's juvenile hall, whether it's through foster adoptions that we work with the state on, with Health and Human Services that make contact with folks all along the way. Counties are susceptible to these things. And interestingly, last year, California did away with the statute of limitations, which can be seen as a good thing. The problem is it was done kind of quickly, and before that, the record retentions there's no records for those older cases. And there's a new cottage industry of getting sued on the older cases where you can't prove yes or no and looking for settlements. So that all plays into kind of the overall increase in liability that the county's going through. Still, through all that, I will let you know that I always make sure when we do our annual review of claims, we are below the California average in terms of what we pay out and what we have to pay into on our insurance. And we do have a PRISM, which is a kind of a co-op for counties in the state, as well as our self-retention going forward. So that's going to be a big thing. And so I know that cities are more dependent upon what now are being seen as stagnant sales tax revenues, and will face challenges as we're looking at resources, or sources of resources outside of the norm, whatever that is. I can imagine, too, our own CBOs are going to be in that same boat, and I don't know about you, but we've been contacted already, and it's tough because at the same time, we are not flush with any cash, obviously, and it's going to be a year that's going to see that. So I do foresee a few strategic investments, but don't expect the county to initiate new programs or projects in these times, or look for the county to revisit expenditures throughout the fiscal year. Just moving on real quickly. The county has now already had a few wildfires. I think we had one over this weekend. There was a great picture of a home that had defensible space around it that I know CAL FIRE put out. I even saw it on the television news. That's a great thing because that person actually did what they were supposed to, and it actually worked very well. Their home was saved. Hopefully everyone could take notice of that. But we have made many investments in vegetation management, fire protection, et cetera. So obviously we all hope for the best. Real quickly, the county is continuing to purchase suitable office buildings to house our staff. Recently, the board finalized or moved forward with the purchase of 3850 and 3880 Brickway. Those are two Medtronic buildings along Aviation up in Santa Rosa for $32 million. The tenant improvements are projected to cost another $15 million. These two buildings will house up to 525 employees from the new Registrar of Voters Department, which you all probably know was split off from into a separate department. The clerk, recorder, assessor, the auditor, controller, treasurer, tax collector, and permit Sonoma in about 126,000 square feet. The improved project comes out to about $371 a square foot. And I say that because as we go through all these iterations and what you sometimes see in the paper, it's really about the best deal for the county financially moving forward. So about $371 a square foot complete. And you compare that with the projected cost of constructing a new building at the county center, which we were told was going to be anywhere between $1,000 and $1,400 a square foot. That is, as an architect, I find that really mouth-dropping, but that's where we're at. The 404 Aviation building is good to go at $424 a square foot. So again, comparing that to the building price. And just to put it out there, the county currently leases the majority of that 404 Aviation, and it's home to public infrastructure and regional parks. The original downtown Santa Rosa project at the Sears building site was projected to cost 35.7, nearly $36 million to $55 million per year for 30 years. That was the mortgage. That totals $1.09 billion to $1.68 billion. Quite frankly, that's why I was opposed to that from the get-go. And I really did want to build back at the county center site until we got the figures of $1,000 or $1,400. And then you see office buildings that are vacant and available for $300, $400, or $500 a square foot. It would be criminal. We still have a building project at the county center site. We haven't taken a final vote on that, but if those numbers don't change, I'm not sure how we move forward with that. So anyway, I just wanted to put that out there because I know that it's been in the news. The public infrastructure, the county center sites have been beset with seismic issues, the faulty sewer systems, leaky roofs, things that you get with old buildings. The 3-building move would cost about $114 million, of which we set aside $73 million. When I was chair one year, we set aside, at that time we called it, probably not the best name because it was a little bit of a misnomer, but Deferred Maintenance Fund. It really was we had realized at that point that it would cost too much to fix the buildings that we have. They would still be deficient in many, many ways. You might as well rebuild them. Everyone, at some point, you come to that kind of decision. So we have $73 million set aside of that $114 million, and what we would do with the others would go out to certificates of participation, kind of a GO bond approach. But the good thing is that we already have the $2 million that we're paying into that build-up fund to be able to pay for the debt service going forward. What we don't have is any money for a new structure going forward. So I just put that out there so you're aware of that. A couple of other things. I hope SMART is really doing very well. And next Friday, the 13th, Windsor will open to the public, and that's great. In 2026, believe it or not, SMART will get to Healdsburg. So that's really just around the corner, which is also a good thing. And obviously, the tax extension is out there as well, and we'll be moving forward on that. If we could move the screen, just wanted to show you 2 road projects that are nearby. Well, I was going to do a whole road improvement update, but you could see the numbers. We still put a lot of money into our roads. A lot of money into paving. I'm really proud of the fact that we've kind of taken that on and made that a priority. If you can do the next one, there's a couple of roundabouts that are nearby. This one's at Old Redwood and Eli, and the next one is at Old Redwood and Railroad. And both of these are going to be built soon. They're in the design phase. They're about 65% designed. We're working on the right-of-way acquisition. I've had meetings with both all the quadrant folks out there, and there seems to be a lot of support for it. Railroad, as you know, has been a bad intersection, so it really needs something. And we do believe that this is going to be something to take care of that. One last thing, if you go one more slide. And I know that you guys, through Councilmember Harvey and now Councilmember Sparks, are very engaged on the water side of things. Speaking of water, is there? No, I'm good. I'll recover. Potter Valley. Potter Valley project, vitally important to the future of and the resiliency of water in Sonoma County and really Mendocino County going north. And this July, I'm the chair of the Eel Russian Project Authority. We'll be meeting in the 3rd week of June here in Santa Rosa, making a few decisions going forward. We are still in the surrender application for PG&E. That's a good thing. I know there's a lot of lobbying going on back in DC and apparently in Mar-a-Lago. Believe it or not, you go to Mar-a-Lago to lobby now. We're agnostic on whether a dam comes out or not. What we really need is the water supply that we've had for decades, 100 years, flowing through Potter Valley. And it really makes a difference for fish flows in the Russian River, the fish health in both the Russian and Eel River. And we've come to a place where we really kind of iron that out and are excited about that. So, if it gets delayed, it gets delayed, but as long as the water keeps flowing through that diversion tunnel, we're good on this side of the hill. And that's what I wanted to put out there as well. And with that, I'm always available for questions, but at your mercy, and I want to make sure I honor your time as well.
Thank you so much, Supervisor Rabbit. If you wouldn't mind, I'll just check, see
Sure.
if anybody has any questions for you before you leave the podium. Anybody have any questions? Okay, thank you so much for visiting us tonight.
Thank you for the water.
Yes, thank you.
I'll slow down next time.
Thank you, Councilmember Sparks. And because that was a lot of information that people may have comment on, I'm going to open that for public comment. Anybody wishing to make comment, we'll start with Zoom.
Thank you, Mayor Ford. Speaking to our Zoom attendees once again, please use that raise hand icon to make a public comment.
Supervisor Rabbit, would you mind staying just a few minutes just to see if there's any public comment? Go ahead. Okay, go right ahead.
For our Zoom attendees, please use the raise hand icon to make a public comment. The first hand is from Lori Alderman. You have the floor.
Hi, I was going to get on anyway, try to get on anyways. This is an action item. Again, a presentation might have, this is like affirming policies and communicating. It's action. It should be open to public comment. The other thing is, Mr. Rabbit, can you please talk to the city of Cotati about putting some deferred maintenance or whatever? Our city hall is over 100 years old. In 1965, it was deemed not good enough earthquake retrofit for a school. So they sold it to, the school district sold it to Cotati, fledgling Cotati for cheap, and we still have this city hall. It's dangerous and falling apart, and we have no money saved. The other thing is, I did not hear about the roundabout at Railroad and Old Redwood Highway. All last year, when we're doing the roundabout ban, most of the city leaders here went around and said there would be no roundabouts. You were technically correct in the city limits, but you went around and you misled people because you knew that there was going to be a roundabout right outside city limits, and nobody cared about it until last year when the county started it up. You guys need to be honest with us and tell us what the things are. Don't sugarcoat things or make it so it's misinformation to the voters. The voters and the citizens need to know all information, not just your limited amount. That's it.
Thank you.
The next hand on Zoom is from Neil Hancock. Neil, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you very much, Neil Hancock. Really appreciate the overview. Thank you, Supervisor Rabbit. One small question, and I know this is looking to the future a lot, but I'm just wondering who you expect to be the paying customers for the water that comes from the Eel River over to the Russian. So it's really about where is that paying customer. I mean, I believe that a lot of the Sonoma County website, Sonoma Water Agency website, says that Sonoma Transmission System gets most of its water from Lake Sonoma, or gets priority there. So I'm just wondering about that question of who might be the paying customers. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
There are no further hands on Zoom, Mayor Ford.
Okay, we'll go to the room. Anybody in the chambers wishing to comment on Supervisor Rabbit's report? Go ahead.
I know that the roundabouts are in the future, but I would like to know what the cost of the roundabout would be, especially the one over at Railroad and Old Redwood Highway. I went by there on my way into town today, and there's very little traffic that comes in on Railroad. That's the way I came in. And to put in a roundabout, I don't know how much it would cost, whether it's 200 million, whether it's 20 million, but I think you could solve the problem much easier by putting in a traffic light there. Just a regular four-way stop, and with a limited amount of time for traffic on railroad to come through, it's not going to hold up the much more intense traffic going down Redwood Highway. The second thing I'd like to say is on the budget itself. As we have no money to do the roundabouts, I'm looking at the amount of money they get from the state. The state is in deficit by about 69 billion, I believe, the last time I heard. It fluctuates, but I assume that's what it still is. And to look at the money coming in from the federal budget, DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, is cutting back on a lot of these things that are wasteful and getting to the roundabout. There are better ways and cheaper ways to solve this. I do agree with Supervisor Rabbit that the cost of building is just unbelievably high. I think that instead of looking into ways to create cheaper housing, we should look into what is impacting the costs, such as prevailing wage and that sort of thing, to build these new structures. It shouldn't cost $100 million to put up a flipping elementary school. It's ridiculous. We put one up for $7 million. Now the cost is $100 million. Couldn't believe it, but that's where it's at. There are big problems here, and Mr. Rabbit should be addressing those. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else in the chambers? Okay, that'll end public comment. So understanding that the projects under discussion are not in the city, I'm just, Supervisor Rabbit, is there anything you wish to respond to? And it could include a pointer for how people can learn more about the county's budget.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I will say, and given, probably spoken to every city council, Cotati is the only one that has comment on presentations, just so you know, and so the public knows. That's very transparent. I appreciate that. Quick comment, I was reappointed 2 weeks ago for the second time by Governor Newsom as the Seismic Safety Commission, and I'm currently chair. Can't tell you, and tell me if I'm wrong, but schools are held to a higher seismic safety standard, and that's probably why they originally sold it, and it was perfectly fine to sell it to the city. There's always risk assessments going on. Everything costs too much. I think that's true. It doesn't matter what you're doing. Construction costs have gone up exponentially. Wages have gone up, but the infrastructure, we're really looking at incredible costs. Roundabouts are actually pretty much on par, quite frankly, with traffic signals. And the benefit of a roundabout is, and I think there are 8 total potential collision points in a roundabout as opposed to 64 in a traffic signal. Railroad is one of the worst. Railroad and Old Redwood is one of the most dangerous intersections in the county, quite honestly, and certainly in my district, and that's why it was a priority going forward to address. They looked at doing a signal, and when you do a signal nowadays, if you did a signal at that location, you'd have to take care of right, left turn, acceleration, deceleration lanes, turn pockets to make it as safe as possible. So by the time you add all that in and you take care of that and the drainage, and as you know, that's a flat area, the roundabout was also seemed to be very comparable. So yeah, these investments are for the long term. You want to make sure you make the right decision. Don't do it on the cheap, and invest the money for, as I see it, always for the next generation to make sure they're safe. I know Mr. Hancock is worried that we're doing the Potter Valley diversion to benefit agriculture. The Potter Valley diversion benefits all water users in Sonoma, Marin, Mendocino counties. Because even though he's right, the primary source of our water comes out of Lake Sonoma, you couldn't get the water out of Lake Sonoma without the minimum in-stream flows in the upper portions of the Russian River. It all works together cohesively, and I think, I know you nodding along, working with the water agency, they know that. It is a whole system that has to work together. You can't just pick one element and say that That's wrong because that's going to go there. Will it cost more in the future? Of course. Everything's going to cost more in the future. We have to make those investments. Will there be new customers that will pay? Yes. And that'll be a good thing as well. And we're looking, the diversion tunnel is about a $50 million projected project. We've, depending on what happens in the feds right now, there's about 22 million already committed. We're hoping to get all the money committed by the time we go. Again, a delay would not be the worst in that case if we can continue to get more grant assurances going forward. The operations of that will have to be picked up by the water users. So if there's anything I missed,
no.
I apologize, but I appreciate very much being able to have the opportunity.
That's great.
Second time.
Thanks so
Thank you
much.
all.
Sorry to keep you
Thanks.
later. Great. Thanks for being here. Okay, we're on to item 7, approval of the final agenda. Are there any proposed changes?
No proposed changes, Mayor.
Okay, so we'll carry on to item 8, citizen business and public comment for consent calendar items. Any member of the public wishing to speak to the council on any items listed on the consent calendar or any matters not listed on the agenda that are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the council may do so at this time. Pursuant to the Brown Act, the council is not allowed to consider issues or take action on any item not listed on the agenda. Pursuant to City Council Policy 2025-02, comments of any member of the public are normally restricted to a total of 3 minutes in length per person for matters not on the agenda and a total of 3 minutes per person in length for any and all items on the consent calendar. The mayor may extend the time limit for a reasonable time where a disability accommodation has been requested. To facilitate public comment, the timer indicator lights will display yellow when there are 30 seconds remaining and red when time has expired. We're going to start in the room, and I'll invite Ms. Del Lasso to come up first.
Thank you. I don't know the procedural things. I just wanted to express a concern about the root systems of the mature trees in Putnam Park as the renovations go on. They've been severely damaged. I am not alone in this concern. I have friends and acquaintances that have expressed the same to me. I'm an avid walker all over Cotati, so I talk to a lot of people. And there is a very large, I mean, if any of you wanted to go and see yourselves, in between the two, I guess they're offices, they're like a metal storage container in the parking lot. There's a massive, it's almost 5 feet tall, and the diameter is about 5 feet wide, of just tree roots. And those, I believe, are just the ones from the oaks in the front of the park where the parking lot, existing parking lot is. And then the redwoods in the back have been damaged as well quite a bit. And I'm just concerned about the long-term viability of mature tree health, because I'm a lover of shade if I'm gonna visit parks, and most of us are. And so I just wanted to express those concerns. And I don't know who oversees like work projects. You know, I don't know if we have an arborist on staff in Cotati or someone who could, you know, check that kind of thing out, but
Great.
it's just a concern.
Thank you. And when we finish all of the consent calendar, we'll come back and address concerns and questions that were raised. So please hang out for just another minute. Okay. Anybody else in the chambers with citizen business or consent calendar? Mr. Sharmolo.
Yes, I just briefly want to, I guess, challenge or debate Mr. Bacher on his statement that policy is not an action item and therefore does not require you opening it up. Is the Pledge of Allegiance a policy of yours? I don't believe so. And it's funny because before, all of these things were policies and you had them on the agenda. So frankly, I think his position is untenable. Like I say, I think that it's very apparent what you're doing and why you're doing it. And one last thing, this lady over here wanted to speak, and I want to make sure you don't forget that she wanted to speak. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thanks for the reminder. And now's a good time if you wish to come up and speak.
This is my first time in these meetings, and I find them interesting. I would like to ask why that hotel started and is now in stop construction. Secondly, Since the lady before was talking about trees, I live in Windmill Farms and we have a lot of trees. And I understand that policy is you cannot cut a tree there unless it's a diseased tree. But the problem that is happening is that some of those trees are going the roots so deep and it's causing problem in the homes. And so I want to know why you have to, if they cut a tree, you have to pay $250 to the city for the tree and replace with another tree when there's too many. Another question I have, and I think I should have asked that Mr. Rabbit, the insurance really has gone up in many issues, not only in homes, but also in vehicles. And we're paying for people that they don't have license, they don't have insurance, and the people that we have that were legal, we're paying for all those things that they're quite high. So the water price, I don't understand very much here, but it says that it is going to go up because it hasn't been changed in many years.
So there's a separate agenda item for the water rates that you're welcome to stay and comment on at that point, and that'll start with a staff report that'll help explain that.
Thank you.
Great, thanks. Anybody else in the chambers? Okay, let's go to Zoom for citizen business and consent calendar.
Zoom attendees, please use the raise hand icon to make a public comment for citizens business. The first hand is from Lori Alderman. You have the floor.
Hi, I'm speaking on the, well, actually, I'd like to thank the last lady. She's very sweet and very, it's good to hear very new voices, and please come again, too. I want to call, of course, to talk about the code enforcement scandal. It's getting ridiculous. I want to remind you that we won, in George's civil rights suit, we won every legal argument for 18 months. We didn't win in the beginning, but 18 months, and we only went to settlement because we couldn't afford to go to federal court. Now we're prepared to go to federal court. You guys are pulling out so much legal BS and backroom stuff, and they're making you all liable. The attorneys are, the code enforcement attorney is. I've been telling you for 18, 20 months something now about this scandal, and you can't ignore it. You can't. It's so blatant, and so much money has been spent of our tax dollars on this. And we have, and also, okay, this week we have a on-camera hearing, and the hearing means that you have to, the judge ruled this, that it's not, it's just the attorneys, it's secretive, no public, no journalists. And does that look like a courtroom to you? Because that's what it's been for 18 months now. That you have this, it's not, a code enforcement is a public hearing. It is a place, it has to do with and we all know you've made the thing where you now have to have an attorney to even go to you made the precedent that you have to have an attorney with this kind of hearing. Nobody can afford to go to a hearing because they might have a on-camera hearing, secretive meeting with the attorneys, and you don't get to even get invited unless the judge tells you. This is crap. I'm sorry. You guys need to get lawyered up, because each one of you and the city needs to have a whole heck of a big budget, because this has gone on way too long. And the insults that are written to us by the code enforcement attorney, like attacking every part of our life, is ridiculous. They attacked George's 1992 marijuana thing, which was not what it seems. It's been used for 30 years. And what did the code enforcement attorney do? He brought it up in his latest argument. You guys need to deal with this. I'm just tired of not hearing from you and not cooperating, and it's going to affect you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Seeing no further hands on Zoom, Mayor Ford, that will end public comment.
Okay, thank you. And I'm wondering if we could have any staff responses to some of the issues that were raised, like starting with the potential tree damage in Putnam Park?
Yeah, sure. So I'll let Craig add anything to this, but the contractor should have, the typical process is root protection measures. They typically have root protection measures around the outside drip lines of trees, but I don't know if there's anything additional you'd like to add to that.
Yeah, there's provisions in the contract for them to protect the trees. In fact, right there near the parking lot, we've modified the design to have a little more open landscape area, because we found that the grading for the pathway in the hardscaped area was infringing on the roots. So we were flexible there and left that area to be natural and rerouted the pathway. So we make those sort of minor changes during construction as well to protect the trees.
And that being said, I mean, we'll certainly circle back and make sure the contractor's adhering to those requirements, but those are the standard contract requirements. If that's not what's happening, we'll make sure that it is followed.
And is there any role for an arborist in approving plans and things like that? Was an arborist involved? Or?
I mean, the landscape architect, they design those layouts, and they use standard conditions it's typically outside the tree line, the drip line of the trees, where you don't infringe in the roots.
So those
for any protected trees.
Right. So those roots that are piled up should have come from outside of that drip line area that we're seeing.
That's my assumption.
Yeah.
But I mean, you know.
The only thing I can think of is if there was something we can reconcile between the design and there was no, adjustment we could make, we might, and there would be some damage to the tree, we'd then bring in an arborist to see if the tree would survive it. But that's like in the worst case.
Okay.
But we'll take it as a follow-up to make sure everything's progressing as it's supposed to out there.
Thanks.
Yeah. There was also a question about the status of the hotel. So the hotel's in underwriting currently, which means that they're getting their construction loan. And, if everything goes smoothly there, they should be in construction this summer. That's the latest on that for the hotel. And there's a question about trees and tree permitting. Maybe JP, you could just describe the process.
Sure. So on private property, the Community Development Department reviews tree removal permits. So any tree that's greater than 12 inches diseased, certainly if a tree is diseased or dead. But also if we observe property damage happening there, then that would also be another reason to allow removal of the tree. Our tree preservation, also has mitigation requirements. And so if you did take out one tree that was not an oak tree, for example, you very well could have a mitigation fee for about $250, which would be the cost of 2 trees over a 10-year period is about how it's calculated. We don't always assess that. If they can plant the tree somewhere else on the property, then they don't pay a mitigation fee. But often, a lot of times, there's not a good reason to plant more trees. It's actually not good practice because you're just packing trees in there. And I will say Windmill Farms, for what it's worth, is really, really good about their tree maintenance. They're really responsive to working with staff, and they've done a really good job with their trees out there.
And so if a member of the public has issues with trees on private property, they should come to the Community Development Department.
That's correct.
Okay, thanks. Anything else that you heard that you wanted to respond to? Okay. Thank you. So we're on to the consent calendar. Thank you to all the commenters, and I hope you see whom to contact if you have more questions. We'll move on to the consent calendar. Is there anybody on council who has anything they wish to pull? Okay. So accept a motion.
Move to approve the consent calendar.
A second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, that carries unanimously. And we're on to direction on future agenda items. Do any council members have items they wish to place on a future agenda? Not seeing any. We're on to agenda item 11A. So this is consideration, introduction, and first reading of a draft ordinance to amend chapters 17.22, allowable land uses, 17.30, standards for all development and land uses, 17.42, standards for specific land uses, 17.44, telecommunication facilities, and 17.62, permit review and decisions of the Cotati Municipal Code. And we'll start with a staff report.
Thank you, Mayor Ford. My name is J.P. Harries. I'm a senior planner with the city of Cotati. I'm pinch hitting for Noah tonight, who unfortunately can't be here. And also Noah was pinch hitting for a former staffer, who has left us and gone on to greener pastures for them. But so I will do my best tonight to walk through it, and I will say right from the beginning that this is really there'll be a part 2 to this code cleanup. There's a couple things within this code ordinance that are discussed in the staff report, but didn't make it into the ordinance, and there's probably going to be a couple other things that we'll come back to you with, and I'll highlight some of that stuff. And I have control. So tonight was to introduce and provide the first reading of an ordinance amending multiple sections of the Cotati Municipal Code. And these are really to correct errors, clarify the permit processes, or allow greater flexibility in the permitting. And these are the specific code chapters. 1722 has to do with the allowable uses. And actually, I'm going to talk about this one right now. That was just a typo in the table. The superscript number was incorrectly listed as a 5. It should have been a 6, so it pointed you to the wrong note within that table. So that's just to correct that typo. 1730 has to do with standards for development and land use for all areas. 1742 touches on specific land uses and standards for those. 17.44 is our telecommunications chapter. This piece is going to be, or I'm going to bring this piece back to you at a later date. 1762 has to do with permit processing. So on that note, when you do read at the end, if you do make a motion, that you should not include 17.44, that's in the title. The ordinance itself doesn't include language. It's only the title that has to be amended. So Chapter 1730, the proposed changes here is to reduce the setbacks for, this is mechanical equipment having to do with heating and cooling. Currently, right now, our code requires that that mechanical equipment be within or outside the setbacks. This presents a problem for a lot of people because often, especially because a lot of times that equipment goes onto the side of a home, usually near electrical, and those homes are built right up to the setbacks, and so there's no way for us to allow that mechanical equipment to go within that setback. So this recognizes that challenge and allows for that type of equipment to be in those setbacks. Along the same note of setbacks, we have a really unusual setback for pools, and it changes depending on where you're located in the within your zoning district and how big your property is. So currently, it's 10 feet minimum from rear and side. So for folks, a lot of folks, that's a big challenge. You can't to meet that kind of setback. Which, if you look countywide, that's a much larger setback than almost anybody else uses. I think the county's 3 feet. In other jurisdictions, it's typically 5. And that's what we're proposing in this ordinance. This would basically align the setback for pools the same as any other accessory structure on someone's property, which would be a 5-foot setback from rear and side. We're going to improve the consistency within the residential fencing rules and allow mechanisms for increased front yard fence height. So our code right now limits fences to 6 feet in height. If you want to go any higher than that, you actually have to go to we have to have a public hearing. And a lot of people they'll build a 6-foot fence, but then they'll want to put 2 feet of lattice on it. You can buy it at the hardware store. We don't know often if that kind of activity is happening. Also, the building code allows, without a permit, a fence up to 7 feet high. So there's a conflict between what our ordinance requires you to come in and actually go through a public hearing process, and then what the building code allows you to do. So we want to get some alignment with that. So this proposal would allow 7-foot solid fences, and would also allow an 8-foot fence if that top foot was an open design, so lattice or some sort of iron. Additionally, we're looking to make a change in the RVL area to allow fences to be a little higher than 42 inches. Right now, it's like a standard, you have to stop. There are situations where it's appropriate to allow for a higher fence, but there's not a mechanism to allow someone to ask for that higher fence. An example of that is if sometimes people they'll store their garbage bins outside, but they want to put a screening around their garbage bins, and we just had that example. And it was quite a stretch to figure out how can we actually permit this. So this allows us the ability to go get them into a design review process for a higher fence. And of course, it wouldn't allow for, fences right at the property line, creating issues of site distancing, pulling out, or creating a wall-like environment. This would only be in special circumstances. The other changes are to Chapter 1742. This has to do with specific land uses. So one of the things that people can do, we allow for home occupations, and one of the home occupations that people can do it's called cottage food industry, where they can make certain foods in their own home and then sell those. Right now, our code is silent on it. So this would include it in the list of home occupations. It also brings it under kind of the regulations that we have for home occupations, which has to do with number of visitors and signage and things and number of employees. So it gives us the ability to regulate things where we can, where state law allows us to include some regulations. And so that it would bring cottage food industry into that category. And then also parts of our code, especially within the home occupation area, refer to covered parking. Well, we've recently eliminated covered parking as a requirement, so this is the cleanup part to remove any mention of covered parking in other areas of the code. And increased flexibility for residential accessory structures. So right now, for some reason, our code says that you're only allowed to have a single accessory structure. So that creates a problem. If you have a pool, you can't have a pool house, or you can't have a shed. Or if you have a shed, you can't have a patio covering, which is considered an accessory structure. So this is something that is too restrictive, And we have other mechanisms to control the what do you want to say, the proliferation of accessory structures. We do that through land coverage, through setbacks, and areas where you're actually allowed to place accessory structures. But limiting them to just one is a little onerous. Telecommunications, we'll bring that back to you. Oops. We'll bring that one back to you at another time. Okay, 1762, this has to do with permit processing, and LTP is short for limited term permit. So a limited term permit is a type of permit that you can get to allow a use on your property that would be outside the normal use of your property. An example of that is a lot of our businesses, not a lot, but some of our businesses have events. And the event is more than we would allow through, on typical day-to-day usage, but it's totally appropriate to have an occasional event. We look at whatever it's required to contain that event and make that event safe and consistent with the city's rules. Currently, the challenge is it presents some uncertainty because part of the challenge with the limited term permit is it gives the director the ability to make that decision. And the way the rule reads, it says, you must notice that you're going to make this decision, so we'll put out a notice, and you provide the date that the decision will be made. And then if anybody requests a public hearing, then it gets pulled out of the director's purview, and then it has to be scheduled for a public hearing at the Planning Commission. And all someone has to do is just say, I want a public hearing. And then that's the process that has to occur. The problem that we have with that is often there's not enough time for that, and to say they're planning an event, and then they come to us and say, well, here's my timeline. We work to meet that timeline, and then at the last minute, someone says, I want a public hearing, and we have to then schedule it for the next available Planning Commission meeting, including all the new noticing requirements that kick in. And then the cost goes dramatically higher for this person, for whomever the applicant is. So this would amend it, the limited term permit process. So basically they would apply, and then we would immediately schedule a public meeting, not a hearing, but a public meeting. We'll notify all the people, both owners and tenants within 500 feet. And go ahead and have that meeting. It will be a director-level meeting. And then, so we just, right from the get-go, say, here's the public meeting that we're going to have. If someone didn't like the director decision, then they could appeal that decision. What this does is it provides puts some certainty in it. We won't have someone coming up at the last minute requesting a hearing. And I can tell you a number of times when that has happened, and it has happened, they end up just canceling their event because it's too costly or it's too late for them to go through that process. And I can tell you it's a challenge because they've, aligned, entertainment and food and everything for these events, and then they have to cancel the event or drastically scale it back. So we think that this will be a much cleaner, better process for folks. And then on the same vein is the idea of a minor variance. So the director can make a decision on a variance, but it has to be a minor variance, which means, let's take a standard like a setback standard. The director can make a decision if the request for a variance is only 10% or less of a standard. So if you have a 5-foot setback or a 10-foot setback, let's stick with 10 feet. He can make a decision on a foot. So anything more than a foot, and it would have to go to Planning Commission for a major variance. So two things to this. One is we want to change the process for requesting a variance to be the same as like what we were proposing with limited term permits. That is, the director would receive the request for a variance and then would schedule a public meeting. We'd notify the folks within 500 feet. We would not run a newspaper ad, which adds close to $400 to an applicant. But we would notify the tenants and owners within 500 feet. And then one of the things we're going to bring back to you is this idea of going from 10 to 25%. We do think it's a good idea, but it's just not in the ordinance. It didn't make it into the ordinance, so we're going to bring that piece back. But I'm introducing that idea to you now. So what would change with this ordinance today, if the council approves it, would just be the process. And the process would be to basically notify people that we're going to make this decision on this date. These are the general plan consistency. They're discussed in the staff report. And the Planning Commission on April 21st did review the draft ordinance. They provided input on the proposed changes and didn't identify any concerns with the proposed changes, and unanimously adopted a resolution recommending City Council approval of the draft ordinance that's in front of you tonight. And with that, I will close by just saying that the Community Development Department and the Planning Commission recommend that the City Council conduct this hearing and introduce and conduct the first reading of the ordinance, amending several chapters of Title 17, which is the land use section of the Cotati Municipal Code, to correct errors, streamline the permitting processes, and allow for flexibility with residential accessory equipment, fences, and processes. And with that, I'm available for any questions.
Are there questions from council? Councilmember Harvey.
Are we not allowed to ask any questions or make comments on 17.44 tonight?
No, it's on the agenda. I think you can speak to it. We're just not going to, we're going to bring it back to you. So actually, any feedback or direction is probably good.
So if it's feedback, wait until after the public
That's fine.
hearing. but
I
yeah.
didn't know whether we could or not. Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions? Vice Mayor Lemus.
I had questions about MECO, and is that, I saw that cottage under 174280 home occupation, BE, you mentioned cottage food operations, but not MECO. Is that included? Is that going to be modified later?
MECO is not included because MECO is governed, I know it says so in the staff report, but the reality is MECO is governed by state law. And so we have to work with, and it tells you how you must regulate that. So we can't apply regulations that differ from state law. So even if I included it in home occupation, or if we included that in home occupation, that brings in a series of laws that would conflict with MECO's state law. So MECO operates outside of our code, basically. It operates as state law.
So, okay, so some of the things I felt were in conflict, so I was just wondering about that. For example, on-site sales under section 2, where it says uses prohibited as home occupations. The on-site sales kind of seem to contradict MECO, and also on C, operating standards, number 9, client customer visits. It says like no more than one client or family at a time on site, but MECO allows for 30 meals a day and 90 a week, and so that kind of seemed to conflict. So
that's exactly why we didn't include MECO because you're identifying the exact reasons why we didn't include that as under the category of home occupation, because MECO stands as its own body of law under the state. So
okay.
You're exactly picking up on why it's not listed as a home occupation.
I mean, I just don't want it that, if this is our code, for cottage, cottage ordinance, the food ordinance, and then we have people operating under MECO, we might get reports of people complaining about, so many meals over the limit that's listed on here. So I was kind of concerned about that.
Yeah, cottage food industry doesn't do sales directly out of their house to folks. They do it through another party.
Or at farmers markets.
Or at farmers markets, something like that. But they don't have direct sales out of the house, whereas MECO does allow that kind of activity.
So we get complaints later, we just kind of refer them to the state? It's a state policy?
Yeah, when it comes to MECO, yes, that's
Okay.
correct.
I think more specifically, the county health would be the direct regulatory for the permitting part of it. I mean, we would still regulate nuisance issues and that sort of thing, like any land use. But if it's specific issues with their permit, like they're not following the law, or their permit that the county health department issued, then county health would be the primary. Yeah.
Any more questions? Okay, I'm going to open the public hearing on this. So we'll start in the chambers. Anybody with comments on the Title 17, Chapter 17 changes in front of us? We'll start in the chambers. Okay, not seeing anybody here. We'll go to Zoom.
Thank you, Mayor Ford. Zoom attendees, if you would like to make a public comment on this item, please use the raise hand icon. Seeing no hands, Mayor Ford, that will end public comment.
Okay, discussion. Let's go to Councilmember Harvey first for the 1744 comments.
Okay, and thank you for these changes. I know some of them have been hanging out there for a little bit. In particular, I kept getting asked many, many times about the swimming pool one, so I'm glad that that's finally resolved. So in the 17.44, I noticed that we added that we wanted a submittal of application for the facility, the coverage maps, and the EMF exposure report. And we did that when we had that project that came before us. But the other thing that we had added at that time is a validation report afterwards. And that did not seem to be a problem from the telecommunications company. So I would like to have that added. So in other words, when they put their stuff up, then they validate that it's within what they say it's within.
Yeah, we could do that. What was going to be presented, what's discussed in the staff report is only what we would be asking for with the application. But there's another section within that chapter that talks about operational requirements around operational. So we can request as part of their final that they submit the EF report, electromagnetic radiation frequency report, to make sure it's consistent with the FCC. I think that's what you know?
No, because what we ended up, they did a report, which we got that report, but then there's no guarantee without them going out and testing what they actually install,
Yeah.
that it is within what that report originally said. And the telecom company said that was not a problem for them to do that. So it's kind of a validation because people were not believing that just because the report said that that particular equipment falls within that, well, how do we really know that they installed it properly and that it really is doing that? So
Yeah, I'm sorry if I didn't articulate
okay.
it well. That's precisely what I was trying to
Okay.
say, is
Yeah.
that we would actually, once the equipment is installed, require a test of that equipment prior to issuing our kind of writing, our final inspection on that. That's one idea, but I know exactly what you're asking. We'll have to look at it, and I'm glad now we have the opportunity to bring this back to you, because it would have been very difficult to try to do something off the cuff to add that in, so.
thank you.
We'll definitely.
So you're asking for two things, like the upfront report of the coverage maps and the EMF modeling, plus a condition about after-the-fact testing, after installation.
Yes.
Okay,
You got it.
thank you. Councilmember Sparks.
Thank you. I agree with both of those things that Councilmember Harvey mentioned as well. My question was about the exemption of HVAC equipment from the setback requirements. I know that not all HVAC equipment is super quiet, and it is nice, if possible, not to build your noisy air conditioning unit right next to your neighbor's bedroom window, which might be in the setback or near the setback. So I'm wondering if there's a way to say that they can be exempted from the setback requirements if there is no practical way to build them outside of the setback.
Yes, I think that's a reasonable thing to say, that if there is no reasonable alternative, then you can encroach into the setback. On the noise note, one thing we did do, we didn't just say you could go into the setback, but we actually made a reference to our noise standards. So that's now baked into any kind of HVAC.
Can you explain how the enforcement would work for someone who built something within the setback that was too noisy?
Well, what happens is typically we review these when they come in for the building permit. And almost always we ask for the specs, which give the noise levels of those. And we look to make sure that, and maybe even a report that does the analysis on, distance to the property line and how that sound attenuates over time. But, over distance. But we review basically the reports that come with the equipment that's being installed, which always, what we're looking for is the decibel levels of that equipment, because we're completely sensitive to that idea. Where it's found that decibel levels can't be met, there's sound blankets or enclosures that can be installed on this equipment, and we would trigger that to be included. That's how it's done today.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Oh, go ahead, sure.
I think that this is pointing out one of the unintended consequences as we, over time, have kind of reduced all of those setbacks, and lots have gotten smaller, and people are closer, and things are closer, that this is just kind of one of those unintended consequences.
Thanks. Anybody on this side? No. Okay. I had just a few comments about the home occupation section, and it reads as pretty out of touch with modern reality. And I'm just talking about the parts that you're carrying forward that you're not changing. Things like shall occupy only a single room and not more than 25% and all be on the ground floor and things like that. So some of it's a question, like there are many, many people who are hired into jobs that don't have an office now and they work from home. Does that trigger the home occupation standards if they're employed somewhere else? Because we got a lot of people running.
I have to give a little more thought to that. I mean, typically what this goes to is people that are operating businesses, not someone that's working from home doing Zoom because
I know, that's what I'm
COVID
wondering.
or
Right.
something. We haven't applied home occupation to those types of activities.
Right. I wonder if there's any language that could be added to the first sentence of it. Now, of course, I can't find it. Because the opening sentence says the following standards for home occupations are intended to provide reasonable opportunities for employment within the home. And I wonder if it would be as simple as saying for opportunities for operating a business within the home. If that.
I'm sorry, Mayor Ford. Could you point to the
1742-080.
1742 and packet page number?
I'm looking at 74, but it's also somewhere in a red line version.
It's 94 in the
94.
red line.
94 in red line, yes. Again, this isn't the changes you're making. It just made me read the thing and realize, wait, how does this apply to modern life?
JP, do you know what the definition of home occupation is? We may need to look that up. I'll do so now.
Yes, please.
And sorry I didn't get this to you ahead of time. As you were going through it, I realized, wait a second, I know lots of people who probably don't have permits for their Zoom meetings.
Well, it's interesting, Mayor, because the next sentence talks about a business license being required, which in your example of someone working from home, I wouldn't think that you would need a business license to work from home.
Exactly. So I'm just wondering if there's a simple way to clarify that we don't mean somebody who's employed by some company but working from their home.
No, I understand exactly. Yeah, we don't ask for business licenses for someone that's being directed to work from home, or they're sick or whatever. Yeah, it's just.
Well, another possibility, I don't want to ask the wordsmith on the spot, especially because I didn't catch this ahead of time. Since you're bringing a few other cleanups back when you do 1744, could we just wait till then?
I would prefer that.
Okay.
So we can give you
Yeah.
a much more informed response.
Yeah, that would be great.
Thank you.
That was my only question, and I appreciate trying to get our code up to date. Thank you. Any more discussion? Okay. Anybody wishing to make a motion and remembering to omit 17.44 when you read the title?
Oh, I had a question. I'm sorry.
Yes, go ahead.
Would, this is our first
Oh, this
reading?
is a first reading, right? So we're
So
moving to introduce.
would it, if there were adjustments about the HVAC noise, those could come back with them having a chance to take a stab at it at our second reading, right? Or do we have to approve it as written now?
No, you should introduce the
Okay.
text now if you desire to adopt it at the next meeting.
So were you working on it over at the staff table, or were you working on the language for that?
Well, my suggestion, sorry, I've lost the page number. Let me go back. Sorry, I've lost, does anyone have the page for the HVAC?
I'm looking at page 74, and I'm hesitating because this was an amendment to a list of exemptions from the setbacks. We may, to include your comment, we may have to structure it a little bit differently, and I'm not
I'm
sure
sorry,
exactly how to do
I'm
that
sorry,
off the
page
cuff.
74 seems to be home occupations, so I'm,
94, I'm sorry.
oh, 90.
That's the red line language.
I guess my suggestion would be that maybe just do a separate sentence for HVAC equipment. It says HVAC equipment shall be exempt from setback requirements if there is no reasonable way to locate them in compliance with the setback requirements.
I think that works, yeah. If ground-mounted mechanical equipment located outside and associated with the primary structure are exempt from setback requirements,
You're at the last sentence there, the new red line sentence, where it says ground-mounted mechanical equipment located outside and associated with the use
No, that-
and accessory structures?
that has to do with equipment associated with accessory structures like a
Right.
pool,
Right,
for
right.
example. So
I was-
this is specific to the HVAC, and so should probably be in that first sentence.
Yeah, ground-mounted mechanical equipment located outside and associated with the use of the primary structure are exempt from setback requirements, maybe if there are no reasonable alternatives or something. Is that what you were suggesting?
That's what I was suggesting, except I didn't think that it needed to apply to cable television distribution boxes and other things that don't ever generate much noise. So I was thinking to apply it only to heating, ventilation, and air conditioning and similar equipment.
I see. So having a separate sentence to carve those out.
Right.
Yeah, got it.
Yes, Councilmember Harvey.
And JP, why was swimming pool pumps and filters stricken in this section?
My read of it is that it got included down in the last sentence that's being proposed.
The pool's an accessory structure.
Correct. So by change, basically, any mechanical equipment associated with pool would have to meet the 5-foot setback.
Okay. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
It
So-
just doesn't seem obvious, it's not obvious. Because they can also make noise, just to be clear.
Right. Where are we with wording?
We're with an associated use with the
Mr. Mayor, I think I have a suggestion.
We'd love to hear
Which
it.
would be to, in the third sentence after the list of examples, you would just say something like, such equipment that generates noise shall only be allowed in the setback if there's no other feasible alternative. So the first sentence would allow the cable box to be out inside the setback, but If it was noise producing, it can only be in the setback if there's no other alternative. Does that make sense? Okay.
Can you repeat that?
I'm not sure I can repeat it, but I'll give it a try. Third sentence, it would say, noise producing such equipment that produces noise shall be allowed in the setback only if there is no feasible alternative. Well, I think we said reasonable alternative before. I don't know if we want to say feasible, practical.
Reasonable's good, isn't it? Are we good with reasonable?
I'm good with reasonable.
Reasonable. Did you get that?
I think so.
Thank you.
So, on page 87, it's also in a list of exemptions. Do we need to do something there to indicate that it's a provisional exclusion exemption?
Page 87.
Yeah, page 87, 2F, it's also in that list.
It has to be in compliance, though, with the section that we just modified, right?
Yeah, the red text there does cross-reference
Right.
those subsections, so I think it's okay.
Okay. Right, the one we just changed. I know, I'm just trying to imagine being a homeowner, thinking about this and trying to trace my way through, so. All right, as long as staff is clear when the application comes in.
Put a phone number in for staff. Call staff.
Call JP.
Right.
Yeah, I think we got it. And I, as John articulated it.
Now would anybody like to make a motion?
First hearing, right?
Uh,
Do we need a motion?
Yeah, we move to introduce. I'm looking to the attorney, looking for nods.
Yeah, I have it. Okay.
So you move to introduce that ordinance.
So we move to introduce the ordinance of the Council of the City of Cotati amending chapters 1722, allowable land uses, 1730, standards for all development and land uses, and 1762, I thought we were,
44.
okay. So we're leaving 42 in, okay. 1742, standard for specific land uses, and 1762, permit review and decisions of the Cotati Municipal Code to correct errors, streamline permitting processes, establish consistency with state law, and allow flexibility in the development of residential accessory equipment, structures, and fences.
Is there a
Second.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I'm sorry, yes, let's clarify that the motion
Yes.
includes the changes.
Including the changes that were provided by city council members today.
And my second includes that, too.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for catching that. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, that carries unanimously. Thank you. Move on to our second public hearing, item 11B, consideration to adopt a resolution approving updated water and sewer rates and superseding existing rates. Let's start with a staff report.
Mayor, members of the council, Craig Scott, Public Works Director, City Engineer. With us tonight is Mark Hildebrand from Hildebrand Consulting, who will be making the majority of the presentation after a short introduction here. The city owns and operates water and sewer utilities and sets rates to recover operating and capital costs. Over time, the actual expenses and revenues veer away from what was assumed over the rate study, and it's necessary to revisit those calculations. The last rate study was done in 2022, and it's time to update the 10-year financial model and the 5-year rate program. The city must follow the procedure prescribed by Proposition 218 for the public to weigh in on the rate-setting process. The city, as I mentioned, hired Hildebrand Consulting back in February of '24 to evaluate the rates and prepare a study. And on February 25th of this year, 2025, the public and the city council received a presentation on the draft study and set the public hearing date for today, May 27th. Mailers were sent out to each of the property owners, and the ad was published in the local paper twice as prescribed by Proposition 218. And at this time, I go ahead and hand it over to Mark Hildebrand for the presentation.
Great, thank you. Do I click or do I just direct? Good evening. Thank you for having me again. So we have completed the noticing process, 45 days as required by law. So we're here today to again review the proposed rates after having given an opportunity to your ratepayers to review those rates, having received their notification in the mail, and protest if they so wish. So I'm going to go back over the recommendations, and then at that point you can open the public hearing and count the protests at the conclusion. Let's see, am I connected? Okay, so as far as the agenda goes, we'll cover the water rates first, the water financial plan, followed by the sewer financial plan. I'll go over some of the financial inputs that go into those plans. And most of the focus is on the capital forecast because that's really what's driving the rate increases. In terms of what goes into the rate studies and the requirements of rate studies, it falls under a part of the California Constitution that's commonly referred to as Proposition 218. There's a lot that goes into that law, but the basic premise of the law is twofold. One is that you can't charge customers more than the cost of providing service, and so my job is to make sure that your rates are calculated in a way that they're fair and equitable to all your customers. And the second part of that law is that you have the authority to raise the rates, but you have to go through the public hearing process, which involves sending out the notice and allowing your ratepayers to review the rates and protest if they feel that they want to. And if more than 50% of your ratepayers object to the rates, then you cannot, by law, raise the rates. In terms of the findings, we did do a 5-year plan back in 2022, which was less than 5 years ago. And the city had me review, the purpose of the plan was to review the financial plan from 2022 to see if the projections from back then were holding up. And we did find that there were a couple of factors in those projections that were not holding up. Namely, the capital spending was higher than we had previously anticipated, and there were some operating costs that had increased more than expected, and I'll go over some of those. As a result, we are proposing to supersede the previously adopted rate increases with new rate increases. So jumping into the water utility, here's a snapshot of the expenses. It just kind of gives you a sense of how the money is spent in any given year. You can see that about a third of the cost is purchasing water from Sonoma County Water Districts, and then another third is salaries and benefits, and then there's other miscellaneous costs. There's no debt at this point in the water utility. In terms of inflation assumptions, we take those costs and then we have to try to make our best guess of what's going to happen over the next 10 years. Obviously, we don't have a crystal ball, but we know what's going to happen in the immediate future, and then we have a sense of what has happened historically. So you can see on the screen the different assumptions we've made. Some of the really bigger line items that are going up substantially would be utility costs. That's in the form of PG&E, and I think everyone's familiar with how those rates have been going lately. We're hoping by these projections that they'll drop down to 5% rate increases after a few years, but in the near term, they are going up pretty significantly. Insurance has been another really big one. The fires have driven that. And then water purchases, the Sonoma County water rates have consistently been in the 10 to 12% range recently, and we are hoping that they will back down to 6%, but that might be optimistic, to be honest. And the 6% for sub-regional. Sub-regional is the agreement that you have with the city of Santa Rosa for the treatment of wastewater. So we're talking about water right now, but we'll talk about wastewater later. And sub-regional costs are the cost to treat your wastewater in your agreement with the city of Santa Rosa. So here's a graph that shows a pretty significant, very significant increase in capital spending. The first 2 years there in green show the actual capital spending that happened in 23-24. And then you can see a really large increase, namely a big spike in 2028, which is primarily driven by the Cypress storage tank, which I know is a project that's been a long time coming. So I'm sure everybody's happy to see that booked and ready to be delivered. But it does come with costs, and the costs for that project have increased with all the inflation that we've experienced. So that would be the primary increase in capital spending. Here's a more detailed list of the projects for water in terms of the year and the specific projects and their costs, in case you have any specific questions about projects. We are planning to debt finance the projected capital spending. The city is just not in a position to cash finance this much capital. So this is basically the same graph as shown before, but it shows in the orange how much of the capital will be debt financed. And so it really just shaves that big peak out and allows from a cash flow standpoint, allows the utility to keep its head above water during that time and spread those costs out over a long time. And in my experience, when you do have a big spike, a big anomalous spike in capital spending, it is appropriate to debt finance, because it's really hard to position yourself without building enormous reserves. It's hard to position yourself to cash finance these types of projects. So here's the final slide for the financial plan for water, which the top graph is comparing revenues and expenses. The columns represent expenses, and the background in green represents the revenue, and that dark green represents the additional rate revenue that will be received with the proposed rate increases. The proposed rate increases are shown on the bottom there, and I wish the text wasn't there because I don't want to misspeak in the percentages. It's 11%, 11%. Is there any way to move that text?
I can turn it off for just a moment.
Oh, thank you. Great, appreciate it. Great, thank you. So the proposed rate increases are 11%, 11%, 11%, then 8 and 8. And that replaces previous rate increases for the next 3 years of 6%. So they are pretty significant rate increases, but it will position the city to be able to deliver a higher level of capital spending year in and year out. It's not just a single event of capital spending. The city really is transitioning to a more proactive approach to reinvesting in infrastructure that is aging. It's a very common dilemma that a lot of utilities are facing with aging infrastructure. And it's a phenomenon that we're seeing both locally, regionally, and across the nation. So you can the other graph on this photo shows the reserves. So the line graph in the middle there shows the red line. Shows the reserves are starting at about $3.5 million at the beginning, and they are being drawn down over time. But in a measured way. They're being drawn down slowly so that by the end of the 10 years, we will be right at the reserve targeted level. And you can see it's sustainable. It's not, the reserves aren't increasing or decreasing in any dramatic fashion. They're quite flat and sustainable at the end of the 10-year period. So what changed since 2022? Just to kind of recap, when we do the forensics on why are the rates higher now than what we had predicted back in 2022. The first is that revenue is a bit lower because folks are using less water. So that's just part of the inevitable deal with water utilities. Unfortunately, when people conserve water, it does result in less revenue, and it hurts the utility financially. it's a tough spot to be in because you do want your customers to use less water. The projected capital spending back in 22, that from 2025 to 32, we projected that the spending would be about $5.8 million, and the new projection for that same time period is $10.4 million. So it's about an 80% increase over what had previously thought would happen. And then in terms of the operating expenses, there are a number of costs that have increased. And again, sorry, I have not memorized this slide. So I'm going to open my computer, as I have a presentation on my computer. But I can tell you that there's some operating costs, utility costs, and insurance costs, all that have gone up with the inflation rates that I think have been well covered by the news in recent years. Sorry about this. Great, okay. So the operating expenses for 2026, so the current fiscal year that we're in now, back in 2022, we thought it would be about $2.3 million, and in reality, we're looking at $2.4 million. So it's just a 6% increase over what we had been projected, but it is material, and it requires you to raise your rates in order to cover that difference. And as I mentioned, the primary drivers for that increase is the water supply cost, which is the Sonoma County water rates, utility costs, insurance costs, and some salary costs. Okay, so here is a proposed 5-year rate schedule. So this is the rate schedule that was sent out on the Prop 218 notice that your customers received. I won't go through all these numbers, but it just shows that all the rates are going up by the percentages that we mentioned. We're not changing anything about the rate structure or how the rates are charged to your different customers. So it's really just a flat % increase that's being proposed. And here is an example bill impact for year one. So year one, it's 11% increase, as I mentioned. But if you wanted to see that in terms of what that means for dollars for different types of customers, this graph shows how low water use single-family account would be affected, about $4.71 per billing statement. And the high water user might see a $9 increase to their bill per statement. Okay, switching to sewer. So same format for sewer. This is a snapshot of the operating costs. And you can see a vast majority of the operating costs for sewer is that sub-regional contract that you have with the city of Santa Rosa. So the city of Cotati, their cost is managing the collection system, the staff associated with managing all that and making sure that the collection system conveys all the sewage to the city of Santa Rosa, and then you pay the city of Santa Rosa to receive that water, treat it, and then dispose of it, which is a very expensive endeavor. And they provide that service to 3 other utilities as well as themselves. You can see there is a little bit of, no, there's no debt for sewer either at this time. Here's the capital spending forecast. So this isn't as dramatic of an increase in capital spending. In fact, there's actually a bit of a drop-off in capital spending in the near term. But over the long term, there is a systematic delivery of capital spending that is higher than what has historically been the case. The last couple of years, 23, 24, the city has delivered a good amount of capital and is looking to continue that trend consistently through 2035. Here are some of the specific projects, dollar amounts, and timing. And then here is that same graph that shows the revenues versus the expenses. And I'm gonna, great, yeah, I've got it here, but thank you, if it pulls up. So the the proposed rate increases in this case are not actually that materially larger than what had previously been forecasted. In 2022, we thought it would be 9% increases, and we're proposing 10% increases. So it's just a little bit of an increase driven not so much by the capital, as I pointed out. That's not really increasing significantly. In this case, it's more about just the inflation, insurance, and the utility costs that have been increasing more than previously anticipated. The reserves in this particular strategy are being drawn down to minimum reserve levels. 2029, 2030, you can see we're down at minimum reserve levels, but it does show recovering and going back up to target reserve levels by the end of the 10-year period. So the proposed rate increases would be 4 10% rate increases and then a 5% rate increase in year 5. So again, the recap, the revenue for sewer also has dropped a bit because of that same decrease in water usage. The capital spending is higher, and I misspoke earlier. I guess it is the capital spending had not been projected to be as high as what it is going to be. It is twice as high as what had been projected back in 2022, and the operating expenses have not changed significantly on the sewer side. So apologies, I misspoke. Yeah, that recaps the reasons, but again, it's a modest increase to what had previously been proposed. Here's a rate schedule for your ratepayers, and then again, here's the bill impact that shows what kind of dollar change the customers can expect to see in year 1 from the 10% rate increase. So a low-use single-family account will see about a $7.80 increase to their bill. High water user might see a $15 increase to their bill. And for my last slide, this is a survey that shows a combined water and sewer bill for a single-family home against other utilities in the region. You can see that Cotati is currently, their current rates put them, I'd say, sort of bottom of the middle of the pack, and the proposed year 1 rate increases will put them, I would describe as top of the middle of the pack. So still very, very much normal in terms of the rates that are prevalent in the region, and certainly not one of the more expensive rates in the region. We obviously cannot, well, maybe not obviously, but we are not allowed to set rates based on what other people charge. That's not legally or allowable, but it is a point of reference and a data point that we show just to show your ratepayers that the city of Cotati is doing a good job of controlling its costs, and is certainly not excessive in the rates it's charging. So here's the schedule that we followed. We have had 4 meetings with the city council. 3 meetings. And then we sent out the 218 notice back in late March, and we're here today for the public hearing. And if it does get approved this evening, we are proposing to implement rates on June 15th. So that would be the end of my presentation. You can open the public hearing at this point, receive comments, close the public hearing, tally the protest votes to see if you have more than the 50% threshold. Then if you don't, then council can deliberate and then vote.
Great. And while you're here, I'm going to ask if any council members have questions before I open the public hearing. Any questions? Yes, Councilmember Sparks.
Thank you. Maybe, I'm not sure if you know this, but on that slide that had the list of all the cities, just a few slides back.
Yeah.
Are there other cities on this list that are going through the same process that we are right now, that their rates we might end up closer to the middle of the pack?
Absolutely.
After
absolutely.
they finish their adjustments?
It's the rate increases that Cotati is proposing are certainly not unusual. I work with almost half of the folks on this list, and they're all experienced some form of a rate increase, and I'd say it ranges from the lowest rate increases we're seeing out there. I mean, I have one client that's doing 2% rate increases, but besides that, the next lowest is 6% and then as high as 20%. So it's really, the increase in cost, particularly insurance and Sonoma water rates, has really been hard for utilities to be able to manage. And then the capital spending, it just seems like it's all the backlog of capital spending is just hitting everybody at the same time right now.
Anything else? Yes, Councilmember Harvey.
As a follow-on to that, so a lot of then the cities that are lower, they may not have any big capital projects coming up, and therefore their rate that they need just to cover operations is less. I mean,
right.
That.
Yeah, and I think I mentioned this during the last time I was here, but you know, as in my experience, and I've been doing this for 20 years, lots of times my clients who are towards the bottom of the list, lots of times the reason they achieve that is because they're deferring capital spending. They're not reinvesting in the infrastructure that is going to eventually collapse and it's going to be twice as expensive to repair, because repairing capital proactively is significantly cheaper than waiting for it to fail and then doing emergency repairs. It's, you know, sometimes pressures are really high on these utilities to keep their rates low, and so they have to defer capital for that reason. And it's unfortunately it's a tactic that often comes back and doesn't have a pretty ending. So it's better. I prefer to have my clients in the middle with a proactive capital spending program.
And a good example of that is the Cypress tank, because it's been in the works since the 1990s. So.
Any other questions? Okay, thanks so much. I'll open the public hearing now. So, opening this public hearing on the updated water and sewer rates, and I think this time we'll start on Zoom and see if there are any public comments.
Thank you, Mayor Ford. Once again, speaking to our Zoom attendees, please use the raise hand icon to make a public comment on this item. The first hand is from Lori Alderman. Lori, you have the floor.
Hi, I'm just making my semi-annual or whatever. Whenever there's a sewer and water increase, somebody on the city council needs to explain it to my now 88-year-old mother, because she's the one who pays the bills, and it never makes sense to the average person. So I understand it, but you need to do a lot of research out on letting people know why the bill is. People aren't going to be watching this. So you need to do much more reaching out to, especially the elders in our community on in this. Thank you.
Thank you. Good point.
Seeing no further hands on Zoom, that will end the Zoom portion of public comment. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll go to the chambers. Anybody here to talk about the water and sewer rates wishing to speak? Come on up.
Yeah, hi, Gary Bradley. First time here, observing, a lot of listening. Do you have data, camera work on all the infrastructure here in Cotati? I'm just kind of curious how you went about your analysis.
They can't answer while you're speaking,
okay,
so
okay.
you
so
just
that was
have,
a question.
Yeah.
I know that Cotati's been here for so many years, and how we compare it to other jurisdictions in the state, and how you compare that to that. It just seems that you've been operating under the same system for quite a while, and now there's a big money grab, quite a bit. $700,000 goes into a general fund, as I read it, and then does that really stay in the infrastructure program? That's a question. Because a lot of things get earmarked and they don't stay there. So that's one of my biggest concerns. Otherwise, I appreciate being here just to listen and learn a little bit about the city.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks for coming. Any other comments in the chambers? Okay, I'm going to close that public hearing, and we'll bring it back. So first, I'm wondering, Director Scott, if you want to respond a little about that capital money that's in the budget and how we assure it's kept for capital purposes.
Sure. So the water utility is a separate utility than the city's general fund, and it's treated, it's completely managed separately. So all the revenue we get from the water rates are applied to keep that water utility operating and to go into the capital projects. Same with the sewer utility. They're independent utilities.
Mr. Mayor, I
Go
just
ahead.
want to make a
Sure.
very clear comment. There's
Oh, yeah.
no transfer of money from the utility to the general fund.
Thank you. Yes. Yes, great. And there was another question there about sort of your survey of the lines and the camera work and things like that. Can you kind of describe how we know what's needed for, I think this is particularly about sewer.
Yeah, so the city, will TV the sewer lines and very methodically go about that, looking for the deeper lines that are immersed in the groundwater, perhaps, where that would get more of the infiltration. We look for manholes that are older, and we'll just see the water coming in. And so it's to our best interest to plug those leaks because the lower we can get our flows to the Santa Rosa plant, you saw that was about 60% of the budget in our sewer, the less we're paying to Santa Rosa to treat that wastewater. And then what you'll see now is that we have a renewal replacement master plan in our capital project list. And that plan is to look at, on the sewer side, our lift stations, the mechanical equipment, and the actual sump that are there to make sure that those are kept up, maintained properly. And if there's any replacements that need to happen, that they get done in a timely fashion so that we're not faced with a catastrophic failure of that equipment. And on the water side, we've got 3 wells, and so the evaluation would be for the well to make sure that its integrity is good, for the pump equipment, and not only looking for its current condition, but programming in how long those components can be expected to last, so we can anticipate when it's reaching the end of its useful life and replace it on a programmed fashion rather than an emergency knee-jerk reaction, which really is difficult to budget for. So we'd like to program that in, as well as the structure around those wells.
Great, thank you. Yes, so now we'll come back to council discussion, and feel free to continue to ask questions of staff. Councilmember Harvey.
So can you also share, because I know we have invested in the SCADA system and what that does for our utility?
Yes, so we have just done a comprehensive revamp of our SCADA system, which is the remote control and data acquisition system. There's so many moving parts in the water system and the sewer system that there's instrumentation out there monitoring with the pump, if the pump's on, off, was it called to run, and did it run? So the communications, the levels in the tanks and so forth, and having a system that controls that operation is vital for system reliability, and even monitoring the proper functioning of the equipment. And so after 6, 7, 8 years, that equipment becomes obsolete, and so it's time to replace those components.
All right. Other discussion on the council? Vice Mayor Lemus.
Yes, I'm just I have a question for Mark Hildebrand about how he gathered the data to come up with that list of where we fall in the middle. Like, where did you get that data?
The list for the survey?
Yeah, the survey that you did. And where do they pull that data? Do they all have these systems like SCADA, or how do they pull that data to provide to you for that list that you had, the survey?
For
For the survey, right, for the rates?
Yes.
Yes, they all post their rates, their website, so I can go to each one of their websites and, just like the city of Cotati. They post their rates, and so I just do the math on, if I had X size meter and I was using so much water, what would my bill be?
Other discussion or questions? Councilmember Sparks.
Yeah, I just have some discussion. Just I want to thank the people in the room for coming out tonight and welcome to our meeting. I just wanted to emphasize from the city council perspective, every year we go through a budgeting process where we start looking at our general fund budget early on in the year, and we have a series of workshops to develop that. And then the water fund and the sewer fund budgets are just a completely separate process. We actually meet on a separate night to discuss them. It's all kept completely separate. So to the city attorney's point, there's no transfer of funds to the general fund. So it's all completely self-contained. And we also had a strategic planning session in, was it in March, I believe, or February, I can't remember. It was a couple months ago, where we sat down and really looked at a high level at our priorities for the city. And one of the things that was most important to me in that process was moving to a proactive approach to reinvesting in infrastructure. And I'm not planning to be on the city council forever. And so one of my goals for myself is that when I'm off the council, I can look back and say that I helped keep the city's infrastructure in a good position. So these rate increases are part of that. It's part of that shift to really, I feel like if we don't do these rate increases, we are going to cost future generations who live here more in the long run, because we'll have to pay more to repair the infrastructure after the fact. So anyway, so I'm supportive of it's really troubling to me how big they are. It really is. But I know that they will be even bigger in the future if we don't do them. So I'm supportive of where they're at.
I know that we received a letter, I think, at our last council meeting. There was concern about conservation, and unfortunately, conservation, while it's a good thing, as was pointed out by Mr. Hildebrand, it's a double-edged sword. The more we conserve, the less revenue we have, and the operations and all the infrastructure, our infrastructure, as well as Sonoma Water's infrastructure, and the whole, as Supervisor Rabbit pointed out, the whole system for water, that still has to work, whether we, use one drop of water or we use what we water in. Unfortunately, as people have done an awesome job of conserving, the infrastructure still ages, the infrastructure still gets utilized, and, we have to keep it in working order. People want to be able to turn their faucet on and get good, clean drinking water out, and when they're done, they also want to make sure that what leaves the home gets taken away and properly treated. So it's one of those kind of counterintuitive things, and I know that when Ms. Roselli from the Water District, Sonoma Water, comes every year, she kind of goes through a whole presentation on that, because it is hard when people have done so much to conserve. But the good news, I guess, if there is any good news in that, is that we have been able to not have to build a whole lot, if you will, in Sonoma County, a whole lot of new infrastructure, while the population in Sonoma County has grown. So we're kind of, it's a teetering balance there. So there's good news and bad news. And I agree with you. It's unfortunate, that the rates have to be raised. But I also agree with you. I want to ensure that our infrastructure is in good shape, because it has to last us oftentimes for, many, many decades.
Thank you. Going down to this end, Councilmember Savage.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I'm also concerned about the amount of increase that we're looking at. I think it's very prudent to pay now as opposed to delaying things. I first heard about the Cypress water tanks when I joined the City Planning Commission a couple years ago, and I was kind of alarmed at that situation. So I'm happy that that's in here, and it is a little bit of a big number to bite off now, but I think it's something that we need to do to keep our city where it needs to be.
Yes, I agree too. I know that half of our water comes from the water agency and the other half from our own. So I think it's important to keep our infrastructure working so that we continue to have water here. And the insurance rates have gone way high, just like Supervisor Rabbit talked earlier. I feel like in every area, they've really gone up high along with the other costs. So while, a lot of these factors are contributing to the impact of the high cost, I agree that it's something that we need to do so that future generations don't have to have a bigger cost down the road.
Great, thank you. I agree with you all. I hate approving rate increases this big. And looking at the slides and seeing the sources of the rate increases, the small pieces of the rates that we actually have significant control over, which are salaries and benefits, was a tiny portion, right? Those were very modest percentage increases to assume. And we all know what's been happening with insurance and with the cost of water from the water agency and the cost of treatment from Santa Rosa. So I don't see an alternative myself. So with that, we need to tally objections. So where are we at with that? Do we have I'm not sure how that works.
The city clerk's office received a total of 6 protest letters. One was delivered via mail, 3 were dropped off at City Hall, and 2 were received via email. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we are not at the point of a majority of ratepayers. So we will proceed to a vote on our resolution if somebody wishes to make a motion. It's on packet page 116 if anybody wants.
I make a motion to pass a resolution of the City Council of the City of Cotati adopting updated water and sewer rates and rescinding the existing rates.
Second.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, that carries unanimously. Thank you. And we're going to take a 7-minute recess. Right.
Oh, yeah.
All right, we're back in session. We are on to agenda item 12A, automated license plate reader cameras, data retention and sharing. And we'll start with a staff report. Is this from Chief Simmons?
It is.
Great.
All right. Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and council members. So it's my pleasure to open or perhaps reopen a discussion on ALPR cameras and continue the conversation about how the police department utilizes its current ALPR cameras and how we might better improve public safety through the use of those devices. So I don't necessarily have a formal presentation or PowerPoint for this agenda item. As it seems at this point, we're essentially revisiting two main points of focus that council has brought up in the past prior. Number one is related to data retention, and number two is related to data sharing. So jumping to those two topics real quickly, regarding data retention, when the department first implemented ALPRs a few years back, the retention period for data was 1 year. And then a year ago, it was then reduced to 6 months. And though I believe solely from a public safety and investigative standpoint that such a retention period, the 6 months that we currently have now, is reasonable and potentially increases the ability to solve crimes, I also believe that further reducing the retention period from 6 months to 1 month will still provide sufficient information to assist in solving the vast majority of crimes in Cotati, while also balancing the data privacy concerns that some on council have expressed in the past. It's a little difficult to assess the best data retention number just because we've a little bit been on an island as far as data sharing is concerned, so it's hard to determine the best retention period simply because our access has been restricted or limited and we haven't been utilizing ALPRs that have such data sharing capabilities. But that aside, I think a 1 month, technically a 30-day retention policy is standard with some police agencies, and it's also actually has a potential cost-saving benefit as there are now additional costs for retaining this data for longer periods of time. Many agencies pay for that extra retention period, but again, for Cotati, I think 30 days, I believe, is reasonable and practical. Number two, the data sharing component. We continue to see daily examples of crimes solved by other agencies' usages of their ALPRs, and that access to neighboring ALPRs provides a significant public safety benefit. With Cotati and the surrounding areas, our department has zero access to the ALPR cameras at various locations. It includes, even in our city, Lowe's Home Improvement has ALPR cameras, 101 Freeway, 116 Highway, Rona Park, Petaluma, Santa Rosa, other cameras in Sonoma County, et cetera. So additionally, SSU is in the process of procuring and installing ALPR cameras as well. And given our close coordination and dispatching of SSU and real-time investigative access to that data is obviously critical. So without access, which is established with data sharing, we have to rely on other agencies, hopefully proactively, in some cases awkwardly, contacting us to inform us of vehicle flags in or around our city and who's coming in and out of our city potentially, which is clunky at best and can be dangerous at worst. So to enable data sharing with other local law enforcement agencies and receive data from public ALPRs, it requires enabling a subscription service, it's hard to say, that also includes 2 fixed ALPR cameras to start. So if you're paying attention to the news over the last year or so, California, the governor's office, in conjunction with CHP, they've been rolling out hundreds of fixed ALPR cameras throughout the Bay Area, even more locally. I mentioned SSU. Healdsburg installed 15 ALPRs last year. Petaluma is adding more. Rona Park has fixed ALPRs throughout their city. List goes on. And again, we have zero access to that data in our current state, which in my opinion cripples us in how we operate with blinders on by not data sharing as other agencies participate in that process. So that's a kind of down and dirty 1 and 2 with those 2 main points. And with that, staying focused on essentially what's on the staff report. It's recommended that council adopt a motion approving the recommendations on both data retention and data sharing. And with that, I open it up to any discussion or questions that you all may have.
We'll start with questions from council members. Councilmember Sparks.
Great, thank you very much. I had a question about the 2 fixed ALPRs that are included in the service contract. If we were to fund that contract, would would we see that come back to council before deciding where to put, or if we were going to use those cameras, or where to put them, or?
I guess the answer is I don't know if that's the case or not.
The contract amount isn't, is, within like staff authority to purchase. So it's really up to the council if they want to see it come back. I would tell you that the obvious places where something like that would go, if we were to do it, would be the main entry points into the city. So probably like 116 and Old Redwood Highway. And maybe then the freeway entrance. I don't know if you have an opinion about where they might go if you were to.
Yeah, I mean, I think any of the main access points, I mean, it's, the cameras, the fixed cameras are essentially made to take photos of the cars going in generally, right? So the rear license plate of a car. So in my opinion, it's more important to have, I mean, both are good to have someone who's exiting and someone who's entering. Ideally, entering is more important to me, because especially from an alert standpoint, because then I know if someone has, for example, a stolen car, they're coming into the city, I'd rather know that first than someone who's leaving. However, from an investigative standpoint, leaving and exiting is very important. So having cameras on, 2 cameras at least on one point is important. So any place where there's main access points on that we talked about, intersections, whether it's West Sierra, whether we're talking about like 116, whether we're talking about Old Red, East Cotati, those main intersections there are ripe for that sort of coming into our city from a public safety standpoint. So if that answers your question, but that's a recommendation. If you said, okay, we're the best place for those 2 cameras, then any of those places make the most sense in terms of.
I was just also sort of curious about the west side of Cotati, where we have so many businesses, and I know there's been maybe some potential for some use over there as well. So I'm just sort of curious what you're thinking.
And we're not obviously limited to 2 cameras, because it's just more, in terms of more cameras, more cost, et cetera. So.
Gotcha.
And reminder, we're just on questions now. Vice Mayor Lemus.
Would there be a way to position it so it can capture in and out exits?
Yeah, so usually they're just fixed.
Like one camera?
Yeah, they're fixed, so it would be pointed in one direction.
Oh, just
so if
one
you wanted the
direction.
other direction, you would put a second camera facing the other direction.
Okay.
If that makes sense. So 2 cameras would be, you could do one point, like if you did, like by the police station, for example, or people coming in from the off-ramp on 101 that are coming down West Sierra, if you wanted to put a camera, you'd put 2.
So it's just one direction, yeah.
Right.
It's not like an owl that kind of can rotate or anything.
Correct,
Okay.
no, that'd
All
be
right.
nice.
Okay, thank you.
You mentioned positioning them for vehicles coming in and out. What about areas that might have a little more high crime activity, like right around Gravenstein and Old Redwood High, and that way? Is that another good use for them, or is it better to get people coming in and out?
Yes and yes.
Yeah, okay, okay.
Yeah, to me, I mean, it's more, so they're for vehicles, so license plate reading. So sometimes you'll have cameras that'll be put up in parks and that sort of thing, but it would be a parking lot as opposed to, the park. And
Is
so,
there a need for us to do anything to augment what Lowe's is doing with their cameras?
So I think that in terms of Lowe's specifically, no.
Okay.
And again, I don't know exactly where those cameras are positioned, but to me, as far as that infrastructure, that business, just having access to the cameras that they have, which they want to share data with us, but we don't have that, right? So, but yeah, just for Lowe's, I think we're good there. But if there's any other business that wanted to get into the business of having a fixed ALPR, then that would additionally, if they were to give us access, because some businesses have these ALPRs and don't want, or they want to limit the law enforcement. They say, hey, we have the cameras, we'll let you know if we see something, but they don't want to do that. So it's totally up to them whether they want to share with law enforcement or not.
Okay, my only question was about that sharing with Lowe's. It wasn't clear to me how authorizing peer-to-peer sharing with law enforcement affects our access to Lowe's cameras. Is it just that we're not subscribed to the service that Lowe's uses?
Correct.
Okay, so it really doesn't have to do with the sharing except as the
No,
subscription.
they want to share, we want to, I mean,
Right.
I would love to get their data.
But they can't connect with whatever system our Axon cameras use?
Correct, because
Okay.
we don't have The fixed ALPRs don't have any connection to the ALPR camera, Axon cameras that we have in our vehicles.
Yeah, okay, thanks. All right, we'll open this up for public comment. So this is the automated license plate reader cameras, data retention and sharing. We'll start in the room. Anybody in the chambers wishing to comment on this? All right, let's check with our Zoom attendees.
Thank you, Mayor Ford. Speaking to our Zoom attendees, please use that raise hand icon to make a public comment on this item. Mayor Ford, seeing no hands, that will end public comment.
Okay, it sounds like there is somebody in the room who wishes to make a comment. We couldn't understand you, so sorry.
Are you talking about the sign of Katari at the entrance of Katari?
No, we're talking about cameras that would be.
Yeah. Cameras.
And we're not specifically right now, we were talking about possible locations, but we're not deciding on a location right now. That'll be up to law enforcement to figure out where to put them.
I would like a bigger sign of Katari.
Ah.
Very, very narrow.
Thank you. Okay. And that sign does indeed have to be rebuilt anyway. Okay. All right, that'll end public comment. Let's bring it back to council for discussion and a decision. Any discussion? Vice Mayor Lemus.
Yeah, I guess I would just want to be sure, Chief Simmons listed some of the agencies that he'd be sharing. So I guess just kind of making sure that it is kind of local agencies or people that kind of need that information.
Yeah, so the way that it works is that each agency has to individually agree to share data. So it's not just opening up for the whole world to, and there's actually California law, that restricts restricts law enforcement from sharing it outside of California.
Okay.
So, and there's a reason, in my opinion, there's a good reason for that, and
Yeah.
maybe I'm biased because of California and law enforcement, but outside of the state, sometimes you run into some interesting law enforcement agencies.
Okay.
So it's,
That's good. Thank you.
anyway.
Councilmember Sparks.
Just want to double check if we set our retention policy at 1 month and then we enable sharing with everybody, will they be able to access our data during that 1 month and then have it forever? Or will will other agencies only be able to have access to 1 month worth of our data at any time?
The latter. So when they try to come in, if they came in 31 days and tried to access some sort of information that would otherwise have been purged, it's gone. So it's gone from our agency. Now, some agencies have longer retention policies, right? So if agency X has a 1-year retention policy and I go in and I want to look at something that happened 6 months ago, I'll find it with them, but conversely, they wouldn't find that with us.
But the overall system respects our 1 month
Correct.
policy kind of globally? Okay, great, thank you.
And also, this is probably obvious, but if they saved some particular data point for a crime, that's kind of a different thing. But otherwise, it rolls off after a month, as the chief said.
And just to say it, it's highly audited, it's all auditable, so if anyone comes into our system and looks at something, we'll know it. And so, whatever they do, we'll know it.
So if somebody was every 30 days coming and downloading every piece of data we had, we would be aware of that and be able to.
That would be, and I think that would be an impossibility to try to do that. I mean, they do it by a direct search of a partial plate or a plate. They don't just say, hey, give me all of Katati's data. That's not the way that happens.
Sounds good, thank you.
Councilmember Harvey.
I know we reduced the time frame from a year down to 6 months, and we're talking about 30 days, but I believe, as you pointed out, we're kind of making an arbitrary decision without really any knowledge because we don't really use it. So I am willing to move in that direction if we are willing to review it, say, a year from now, because I would hate for us to arbitrarily do this and then be stuck. So I feel like it should be revisited because we don't know what we don't know at this point, and we're just arbitrarily changing it to 30 days.
Yeah, and if we find that we're, having these cases or that are prolonged in terms of time and we're now missing data that we would otherwise been able to keep, then I will be sure to bring that back. And if nothing else, during the annual report or during the quarterly reports to Police Advisory Committee, if we're having any sort of issues, and I'll bring it to the attention of you all to see if there's discussion to be had in that regard.
Vice Mayor Lemus.
Yeah, no, I was just curious how much we were saving from going from a year to 1 month. 6 months to 1 month.
So right now, because we don't have the subscription and we don't have those
Okay.
fixed ALPR cameras, then we're not, so for our Axon ALPR cameras, we're not getting charged anything different,
Okay.
whether it's 6 months or a year
Okay.
or 30 days. But if we were to go to actually opening up from a data sharing standpoint, 30 days is actually, there is a cost saving there because once you get outside of 30 days, longer than 30 days, then of course, the vendors start charging you extra for the storage, so.
Okay. Okay.
But you're not sure sort of the scale of that cost, 6,000 compared to?
No,
Okay,
no, because
that's fine. Yeah, if we
It's-
if we
it's,
revisit, then we'll have to know, right?
I can tell you, I don't have the exact number, I can tell you it's pretty steep.
Okay.
It goes up exponentially, yeah.
All right, any more discussion? All right.
Can I ask one?
You can.
So is that, I know you belong to a consortium, for a lot of things. Is that something that ultimately, from a purchasing of packages like that, could that be negotiated at that level? Because you said if we do it one at a time, it gets exponential. Is that?
That's more in relation to retention, data retention. In terms of, I think like anything else, the more you buy, the potential better deals you could get. I will say that we're essentially behind the curve when it comes to that, and I don't know if the consortium would necessarily play into that unless they wanted to make some larger purchase throughout the whole county. But I think that a lot of agencies, and they may continue to grow, but the bigger agencies like the Sheriff's Office or Santa Rosa, they've made Santa Rosa has a lot of ALPR cameras, and so I don't know that they're in the business of wanting to get more to help us on, on getting a deal in that regard.
It was just a thought, if,
Yeah.
because I know we do a lot of sharing throughout the county on a lot of things. It was just,
For
I
sure.
was looking for ways to make it cheaper.
Yeah, and I mean, it's definitely something that we can
Yeah.
throw out there with the consortium to see if there's any interest there on their end, to see if that would somehow reduce costs in that regard.
At one point, the council probably remembers, the auto theft task force had a sort of group purchase, but that was for a limited kind of project time.
Yeah, Soncat had some monies that was available, and cities took advantage of that.
All right, any more discussion? Seeing none, anybody willing to craft a motion?
Well, I move that we adopt a motion approving staff recommendations on data retention and sharing.
Second?
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, that carries unanimously. And we're on to 12B, Mayors and Council Members Committee appointments. There's just one appointment coming up at the next Mayors and Council Members Association meeting, which is appointments to the Association of Bay Area Governments Executive Board. And we have 2 letters requesting appointment to the primary spot and 1 requesting appointment to the alternate spot. So, I'm sorry, maybe you were going to say all that. Should I have turned it over to you for a staff report?
You did a fabulous job. I was waiting for my moment tonight to finally give my staff report. You did great.
Did I say it all? I left you nothing to say?
I guess you can
Okay. Sorry, I was just trying to say what the item was. Okay, so any questions? All right, we'll open this up for public comment on Mayors and Council Members Committee appointments. Anybody on Zoom first?
Thank you, Mayor Ford. Once again, Zoom attendees, please use the raise hand icon to make a public comment on this item. There are no hands on Zoom, Mayor Ford. That will end the Zoom portion of public comment.
Okay, so we'll come back to the chambers. Anybody in the chambers wishing to make a comment? Feel free to come on up. Thank you for being so patient through our entire meeting.
Thank you. It's really odd. I've learned to enjoy city council meetings. Good evening, Mayor, council members, and staff. My name is Frank Quint, and I serve as the District 4 council member for the city of Petaluma. I'm here tonight to respectfully request your support in appointing me to the Executive Board of the Association of Bay Area Governments, or ABAG. ABAG plays a critical role in shaping our long-term future in our region, addressing housing, transportation, economic development, air quality, and climate change. I'm the father of 3 adult children, one of whom lives here in Cotati, just a couple blocks down the street, and a wonderful 11-year-old boy that my wife and I adopted in 2013. I was raised in a blue-collar family where I developed a strong work ethic. I'm a veteran. I've served abroad. I'm a first-generation college graduate with a degree in accounting and an MBA. I'm a transportation subject matter expert with a successful career in supply chain management. In Petaluma, I've been a vocal advocate for affordable and missing middle housing. As chair of our Transit Advisory Committee, I've championed fare free transit and efforts to expand access through programs like LumaGo. As the vice chair of PBAC, I've helped shape our ATP, which we'll be adopting soon, very proud of that, and which I believe is one of the most impactful things we can do to combat climate change. And if you ask our city manager, Peggy Flynn, I have no doubt that she would confirm my strong, consistent advocacy for economic development. On ABAG, I will provide an engaged voice and I will advocate for the unique needs of our cities and towns. My combined experience in transportation, business, and civic leadership has prepared me to contribute effectively to ABAG's mission. But more than that, I bring a deep commitment to transparency, collaboration, and practical problem solving. I understand the importance of listening to fellow elected leaders and council members like you here in Cotati and ensuring your voice is heard in our regional dialogue. If appointed, my focus will be on securing new revenues for transit operations, promoting housing affordability, economic development, and defending clean air and climate standards. I will work hard to represent our shared values and stay connected to local priorities and bring back resources, insights, and influence that benefit our collective cities and towns. Thank you for your time and consideration. I'm honored to be here.
Thank you. Anybody else in the chambers? Okay, we'll close public comment on that and bring it back for council discussion. So let's start with the easy one. Is there anybody with any concerns about reappointing Stephen Zollman as the alternate member? Okay, so now down to the primary, which is the 2 letters from Susan Adams and Frank Quint. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
I guess my question is Frank's only for the primary? I kept looking to see whether it was primary or alternate.
Well,
I wasn't
And I'm
sure.
hoping to ask him that before he, but he
Oh, he left?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh.
So the way it was sent out from the Mayors and Council Members Association was 2 letters for the primary and 1 for the alternate. That's my understanding.
Oh, okay.
If you'd like to take a look.
Yeah, because the other 2 letters specifically state, Stephen's letter and Susan's letter specifically state, but I was not catching, I mean, and maybe I'm missing it.
Right. Are you trying to pull up the email from MCA? Okay. So let's hold off on that then and go back to the primary seat. I mean, Councilmember Quint was clearly advocating for appointment to the board, and so I think at least we have a decision to make about Susan Adams versus Frank Quint for the primary. So let's have that discussion.
I mean, Susan has done a really awesome job for us. We've had previous people on there, and she's really come in, and she really does a really good job of letting us know what's going on. And I think she's really, turned that commitment for Sonoma County around, because before we were really, it was really very much whatever MTC wanted. They were just going along with that, and Susan has really done a good job of standing up for us and making the point that Sonoma County is Sonoma County, and we're different, and, we need to be considered. So I would like to move her forward.
Okay. Councilmember Sparks.
I'm not as plugged in on everything that she's doing on ABAG, but I have really enjoyed working with Susan on the Mayors and Council Members Association during my years mayor, and I thought she was very skillful in working in that capacity, and I was really grateful for Councilmember Quint coming and speaking with us, and I'd love to get to know him more over the years, but my experience with Susan so far, I would be comfortable reappointing her.
Down at this end?
I've enjoyed meeting Susan, and she shared her passion with me for serving on ABAG, so I think she would be an excellent person to continue in that role.
I agree. I look forward to knowing more about Councilmember Frank Quint. I hadn't met him before. And I know that it takes a few years to really get into, she was appointed in 2021, so it takes years to kind of, gain leadership and trust within ABAG. So I think that reappointing her would be a good thing, because she will have that, continued work on there.
Great. I agree with everybody. I think the value of experience and trust in that role is really high, and so I would be very reluctant to sort of unseat a sitting executive board member.
And Mayor,
yes.
just to let you know, if it's helpful for the conversation, I found the email from the clerk of the Sonoma County Mayors and Council Members Association, and it was transmitted as primary seat. Even though the letter from Councilmember Quint does not indicate primary or alternate, it was transmitted as letters received for primary seats, Susan Adams and Frank Quint, and then Zolman as an alternate. I don't know if that, it does, aside from the clerk saying that, it doesn't say it, as I said in the letter, so.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Okay, so now to the alternate position. Stephen Zolman is the incumbent in that role. Any discussion about supporting, I could check with Councilmember Quint before the meeting if he was interested, if people really wanted to support him over Councilmember Zolman, or Mayor Zolman. Anybody want to make that case?
I feel like if the clerk kind of presented in that way, I
Right.
would want to deviate from that.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Okay, so everybody's okay with me supporting Mayor Zolman for the alternate seat?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I don't feel like I need a motion. I have the direction I need. Is that okay with how we proceed?
Yeah, just direction, that's it.
Okay, great.
Walk this way.
Right.
And just to add that if you find out, kind of during the whole discussion, that we give you the leeway to do what you need to do in the meeting.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate it. Not all mayors feel like they have that authority, so I appreciate you making it explicit. Okay, city managers report, agenda item 13.
All right, so thank you. As you may have noticed around town today, the paving project has completed. The dig outs and crack seals and slurring is today. Today, Wednesday, and Thursday is the plan. So it's going to just go along. I think the one thing just to point out is on Thursday, they're going to be doing the narrow part of the Laguna Crossing on East Cotati, so that's going to flag to a one-way, so there'll be a little bit of a traffic backup there on Thursday as they work around the island in that particular area. And then the striping, so once the slurry is done by the end of the week, then the striping is the last bit to happen, and that will happen about 7 days after. They usually require about a 7-day cure to make sure the slurry is cured, and then they can come in with the final striping. But in the meantime, there'll be those little temporary, stick-down things like you see now, stick-down reflectors. As part of the work, we're also doing some improvements on Benson Lane. We've long had complaints from the neighbors there about cut-throughs and speeding in particular. So as part of this work, we're also putting some speed humps in there on Benson, and where Benson ends right now. Currently, there's a stop sign at the end of Benson where it comes into Loretto, but we're going to be also putting 2 new stop signs on Loretto, so it turn it into a 3-way stop so that no one's flying through the intersection. And if they do, it's much easier for the police to enforce a rolling stop than it is trying to get speeding in a residential neighborhood. And then Putnam Park, the hardscaped areas consisting of the pathways, perimeter of the playing field and dog park, and the sidewalk along the parking lot are taking shape. Right now, currently what's happening is the trenches for water and electrical are going in. This coming Saturday, May 31st, is our portable garden workshop from the Master Gardeners at the ranch from 10 a.m. to noon. It's how to grow food at home in the containers or in a small space, and it's free. Walk-ins are welcome, but pre-registration is preferred. At the ranch, we're also starting up the Cotati Farm Box program. It'll start in June, and you can get weekly produce boxes with items grown on the ranch. If you're interested, that will go through October, and there's information on social media and the website. Next Wednesday is the kickoff for the Cotati Farmers Market season, so every Wednesday from 4:30 to 7:30, the Farmers Market will be in La Plaza with live music, fresh produce, prepared food, and other local goods, and the market's going to run through the end of September. In the vein of Pride Month, I believe it's the 18th of January is the Pride theme for Farmers Market.
June.
So, I'm sorry, June. Yeah, June. So that's the Pride theme day for the Farmers Market. Also on Friday, June 13th, we're going to host our first movie in the park this summer, doing Toy Story in La Plaza Park. And it's a free event once the sun goes down at approximately 8:15. People can bring a picnic dinner and watch a movie under the stars. And we'll have the irrigation turned off so nobody gets wet. Yeah. Anyway, other upcoming programs and events to look forward to are multiple summer camps, including Camp Cotati, the farm camps, theater camp, robotics camp, as well as Cotati Kids Day, National Night Out, and much more. And you can find this all online. And of course, contact us if you have any questions. Thanks.
Thank you. Any questions for the city manager? Okay, we'll go on to council member reports. Start down at this end. Councilmember Sparks.
Sure. Councilmember Savage and I attended the 2x2x2x2 meeting last week, but education committee meeting. We had I'll let you speak to the first half because I had to step in a little bit late, but we had a presentation from the finance person at the school district, which really went into in detail, nuts and bolts of how the funding works for the school districts. And one of the 2 big takeaways were that basic aid districts, which are districts in very wealthy communities, are funded at a per pupil level that is astonishingly more than what we're funded at. And also that our school district is funded based on average daily attendance rather than enrollment. So if the attendance drops by 1% year over year, people are not attending as regularly, it translates to about an $800,000 decrease in funding. So it's very difficult for them to budget because of the way that is set up. So be on the lookout at some point in the next few months. We might be requesting an agenda item for letters of support for particular ballot measures or letters to our representatives requesting that they do something about the inequities in the funding formula, because we're one of only, I think, a handful of districts that are growing, and we're one of the lowest funded per pupils districts in the state because we're kind of losers in the way that the details of the funding formula shake out. So it's very difficult for our school district to retain their staff and keep operations going. And then the mayor and I attended a tour of the hatchery at Lake Sonoma, and I'll let you speak to that one, but it was fantastic. We learned a lot.
Councilmember Harvey.
I attended the Marin Mosquito and Vector Control District. Most of what we had was really administrative things going through the assessments for next year. So that was pretty much the public hearings for all of those, and there's a few of them, so we have to go through each one. Then I attended the Zero Waste Sonoma meeting, and of note there is we assigned an agreement for repair events, repair and reuse events for all of the cities. And so I know that Damien's already been in touch with the staff there, but we will get our own event, and all the cities will, so that was kind of cool. And we approved for new software for tracking the compliance with SB 1383. It doesn't really affect our staff because it's mostly the Zero Waste Sonoma staff that uses it, but when we first started tracking that stuff, there was only one software vendor, and now there's multiple, so we were able to actually get a new and different product, so that was really helpful. I also attended the Master Plan on Aging Caring Committee, and we're just still further working on, what our plan is for this year, so that's helpful. I attended an update on the household hazardous waste facility, and that was pretty exciting because we're now at 50% complete on the design. So that we got to see what the buildings are going to look like, and so that's moving along quite nicely. So that'll be nice.
Where will that be?
It's up in Windsor, kind of in their industrial area there. It's very close to the freeway. You'll be able to see it from the freeway, but it's going to be really nice to be able to have, facility to collect the household hazardous waste, as well as, some other things, like mattresses and, all kinds of things like that. But it's pretty cool. And we're going to be able to move the staff up there. So we're putting actually administrative buildings. So right now we rent space from the county, but the building that the staff is in is going to be torn down. So they know that they have to vacate that. And lastly, I attended kind of a cool thing. The North Bay Division League of California Cities held a past presidents lunch. So it was kind of neat. There was probably about 20 past presidents, people that, had been doing it for a while. So that was kind of cool to kind of see people that kind of didn't run anymore. So, usually you see other council members at different events and things, but, some people had kind of dropped out. So it was good to catch up with those folks. So that's all I have.
Great, and I'm just going to continue that down the line. So I have 3 things to report on. The Measure O Oversight Committee, which remind us, not Cotati's representative, but the city's in general representative, had its quarterly meeting, our first meeting with Nolan Sullivan, the new director of the division. I don't know, Department of Health Services, yeah, that's right. And that department is facing a real watershed with federal funding cuts, and so that all plays into Measure O usage and allocation and thinking about budgeting for the 10-year span of the approved sales tax. So they're retrenching a little bit to be ready, try to be a little more ready for coming future cuts. They've dramatically streamlined their budget reporting tools, and it feels like the department is getting a better handle on both what's happening with the money and who the clients are that we're serving. So I was impressed. I grabbed copies of the Measure O annual report for you all and left them at home, so I'll bring them next time. As Councilmember Sparks mentioned, I went to the Russian River Watershed Association board field trip, the annual board field trip, which was the tour of the Lake Sonoma dam facilities and fish hatchery, and most impressively the habitat restoration work on Dry Creek, which is hard to see because it's all on private land, so you have to have a special tour to get out there. It was very cool to see how quickly nature regenerates if you give it a chance. And then we had that Sonoma County Mayors and Council Members Association special board meeting to decide on 3 topics of mutual interest across all the cities that we're going to pursue having common messaging around and working as a sort of with a unified voice with the county in those 3 areas. Turned out to be homelessness and mental health services. They couldn't get themselves down to 3, so they made those 2 into one item. Emergency preparation collaboration, and shared facilities and resources. So, I was afraid you were going to ask me what that meant. It includes things like libraries, which are in some sense a shared exercise between cities and counties, and they're housed in cities but serve people much more broadly than the cities. But I think it's also an effort to find areas where either the cities between themselves or the city with the county can sort of do something together and save money by doing it together.
It's kind of almost like that mutual aid resources, people doing things for each other, helping each other.
Could be that, but it could also be actually, agreeing, like, one example is the SAFE team with us and Rohnert Park and Sonoma State, where that's a shared resource. We're doing something together rather than each of us running our own program. So I think that's one example. But we'll see. So the next stage is to send those out to all of us and us to have a discussion about kind of what our priorities are within those that then I would take back for more discussion, trying to formulate that message. Okay.
Okay, thank you. So on May 15th, I went to Los Cien at Sally Tomatoes. I had an immigration update. It was really good. If it's recorded, I recommend whoever wants to watch it. It was policy, impact, and an update. They had UCSF Professor Hing was the speaker. And so he talked a lot about, for example, how did we get here? He talked about IRCA of 1986, 9/11, the election, the recent election. But he talked about Alien Enemies Act, birthright citizenship, student visas, alien registration, TPS. He talked about DACA. He talked about so many different things historically, which was really a good presentation. That same day in the evening, I went to Sonoma State University for the cultural graduation for Raza Day. They had Raza graduation that evening. And on the May 16th, that next day on Friday, I went to the mayors and council members legislative meeting in the morning. And so some of the things that we learned was about the budget with the state, how there's no money for Prop 36, which is public safety proposition, no money for homelessness, no money for Prop 4. Instead, what they're doing is doing instead money instead of additional money for Prop 4. So that's kind of sad. The whisper money that they're saying that we're really in deficit is more like 40 billion deficit. So that was kind of sad to hear that. There's models for encampments, but no money that comes with it. So one of the things that they're asking is to let legislators know how the cuts are going to affect us locally so that they can advocate, so that we can all advocate and they can advocate for us. They call it the worst budget we've seen. So we did have representatives that were there that spoke from Laura Beltran from Aguiar Curry's office, and also a representative from Senator Cabalden's office was there. So they gave us an update. That was on the 16th. On the 18th, Sunday, I went to Healdsburg. Abel de Luna, who was the first Healdsburg mayor, had a community center named after him. So it was the Bel de Luna Community Center, which is right there on Healdsburg Avenue. So I went to the naming and dedication ceremony and got to spend time with Dolores, the iconic Dolores Huerta, and also with the General Counsel of Mexico in San Francisco, Ana Luisa Vallejo was also here. So I was able to spend time with her. So that's what I have on what I did.
Thank you. Councilmember Savage.
Just a little more information on the 2x2 meeting. At the beginning, they talked about the great shakeout they're going to have in October, which is a coordinated earthquake preparedness between Rohnert Park, Sonoma State, and Cotati. And I know Chris and the other police chiefs have been involved in the pre-planning. It's Thursday, October 16th at 1 o'clock. So there'll be more information coming on that. Also, to piggyback on the Pride Farmers Market on June 18th, our library, the Rohnert Park Cotati Library, will be there with a booth and some swag to hand out if you're interested. Get there early before it's gone.
Nice, thank you. And I realized I forgot one thing. A few days ago, I attended the Rohnert Park Cotati Rotary Club annual celebration of all kinds of People of the Year, which includes the Cotati Officer of the Year. So City Manager Obed and Chief Simmons and I were all there to honor Jerry Cunningham, our Officer of the Year, whom we've discussed in the meeting before. But Chief Simmons does a great stand-up routine, so you should all come. Thanks. All right, we're on to information received after the agenda was posted.
There was one public comment received. That comment was distributed to the council and is available here in print in the chamber tonight. Thank you.
Great, so we are adjourned at 9:17.